Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that every night, when you lay your head on your pillow, you're actually stepping into the most powerful manifestation chamber known to humanity? That while your body rests, your subconscious mind becomes a divine workshop where miracles are not just possible, but inevitable. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Tonight, something extraordinary is about to happen. As you prepare for sleep, you're not simply ending another day. You're entering what Florence Scovel Shinn called a sacred space prepared by infinite spirit, where the very gates of wealth swing open and divine provision flows without a single obstruction. Has this ever happened to you? You've gone to bed worried about money, stressed about bills, anxious about your financial future, only to wake up with an inexplicable sense of peace, or perhaps even discover an unexpected opportunity waiting in your inbox. This isn't coincidence. This is spiritual law in action. While the world sleeps, while your conscious mind finally quiets its endless chatter of doubt and limitation, your subconscious becomes what I like to call the divine receiver, completely open, utterly receptive, and perfectly aligned with the frequency of abundance that governs the entire universe. You see, most people approach sleep as merely a biological necessity, a time for physical restoration. But what you're about to discover might surprise you. Sleep is actually your most sacred appointment with wealth itself, not the kind of wealth that comes through grinding and striving, but the effortless abundance that flows when you align with spiritual law. Tonight, we're going to explore how ancient wisdom meets modern manifestation, how the simple act of listening to specific abundance affirmations while you sleep can literally reprogram your financial reality at the deepest level. We're talking about transforming not just your bank account, but your entire relationship with money, prosperity, and your own divine worth. The truth is, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's imagined and what's real. It simply accepts whatever information you consistently feed it. And during those precious hours of sleep, when your logical mind stops interfering, when your doubts finally quiet down, that's when the magic happens. That's when wealth, consciousness gets installed like software into the hard drive of your soul. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this over a century ago, when she wrote about the power of the sleeping state to magnetize miracles. She knew that when you enter what she called this holy appointment with the law of abundance, you're not just hoping for change. You're commanding it through the divine authority of your aligned subconscious mind. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share with you has the power to transform not just your sleep, but your entire financial destiny. We're about to dive deep into the sacred mechanics of overnight abundance, where every affirmation becomes a seed planted in the fertile soil of infinite possibility. If these revelations open something within you, I'd love to have you subscribe. This channel is where we explore the deep connections between consciousness and wealth that most people never discover. Think about this for a moment. You didn't stumble upon this message by accident. Your presence here right now at this exact moment in your life is part of what spiritual teachers call a divine pattern. There's something profound happening behind the scenes of your journey, something that goes far beyond mere coincidence or random chance. The fact that you're here listening to these words about abundance and transformation reveals that you're being guided toward a perfect realignment with universal law. Here's a hidden truth that most people never discover. Every delay you've experienced, every financial setback that left you questioning your worth, every moment when prosperity seemed just out of reach, none of it was punishment. It was preparation. The universe has been orchestrating your readiness for this very moment of awakening. You see, Spirit has never withheld good from you. Not once, not ever. All the supply you've been seeking, all the health you've been praying for, all the love and success that feels so distant, it's already completed in divine mind. It already bears your name. It's already vibrating toward you at frequencies beyond what your physical senses can detect. But here's where the real revelation begins to unfold. Your subconscious mind has been programmed by years of worldly conditioning to expect struggle, to anticipate scarcity, to brace for disappointment. These aren't your true thoughts. They're inherited patterns, learned behaviors, societal imprints that have created invisible barriers between you and your natural birthright of abundance. During sleep, something miraculous happens. These barriers begin to dissolve. Your conscious mind, with all its learned limitations and fearful projections, finally steps aside. Your subconscious becomes like fertile ground, ready to receive new seeds of possibility. And when you feed it the right vibrations, the right frequencies, the right spiritual truths during those sacred hours, transformation occurs at the deepest cellular level. The ancient mystics understood this process intimately. They knew that true manifestation doesn't happen through force or desperate effort, but through divine alignment. When you surrender into sleep while listening to abundance affirmations, you're not just hoping for change. You're participating in the very mechanics of creation itself. Your brain waves shift into theta and delta frequencies, the same states that shamans and spiritual masters have accessed for millennia to perform what the world calls miracles. In these states, your mind becomes incredibly receptive to new programming. Every word of abundance you hear begins to overwrite decades of scarcity programming. Every affirmation of wealth starts dissolving the invisible contracts you unknowingly signed with limitation. This isn't positive thinking or wishful imagination. This is sacred science. Neuroscience now confirms what spiritual teachers have known for centuries. That repetitive exposure to specific frequencies and affirmations during sleep can literally rewire your neural pathways, creating new thought patterns that naturally attract different outcomes. Now, I want to go even deeper into this transformation process, because understanding the mechanics behind overnight abundance programming will revolutionize not just how you sleep, but how you relate to money, success, and your own infinite potential. The impact of what happens during those 8 hours of divine programming extends far beyond the bedroom. It shapes your decisions, influences your actions, and ultimately determines the trajectory of your entire financial destiny. What's fascinating is that beneath all the surface turbulence of your financial life, the bills, the budgets, the banking alerts, there flows what spiritual masters have called the golden river of prosperity. This isn't metaphorical language. It's a living reality that exists beyond the physical realm. This river has been flowing beneath your life since the moment you were born, constant and unending, never diminished by any appearance of lack or struggle you might be experiencing. Most people live their entire lives walking on dry ground, completely unaware that just beneath their feet flows an infinite stream of divine abundance. They make decisions based on scarcity, create strategies rooted in fear, and exhaust themselves trying to squeeze water from stones, all while standing directly above the most abundant source of prosperity in existence. The revelation that changes everything is this: you don't need to create abundance. You don't need to attract it, manifest it, or earn it through some complex spiritual gymnastics. You simply need to dip into what's already flowing. You need to step down from the harsh terrain of struggle and immerse yourself in the golden current that has been waiting for your recognition all along. During sleep, when your analytical mind stops building dams of doubt and limitation, this river naturally begins to surface. Your subconscious becomes like a divining rod, naturally drawn to the wealth frequency that's been calling your name. This is why some people wake up with million-dollar ideas, why breakthrough solutions appear in dreams, why morning inspiration often carries the seeds of life, changing transformation. But here's where the journey takes a profound turn as you allow yourself to recognize this underlying prosperity. You begin to enter what can only be described as a sanctuary, not a physical place, but a state of consciousness where divine law reigns supreme. In this inner sanctuary, something magical happens. Your spoken word begins to merge with faith in ways that create what mystics call radiant decrees. These aren't ordinary affirmations or wishful thinking. When you speak from this sanctuary state during sleep programming, your words carry the authority of spiritual law itself. They become living commands that summon wealth from every corner of creation. Behind the scenes of the visible world, invisible forces begin responding to your voice with the same obedience that water shows to gravity. This process reveals the hidden mechanics of true manifestation. Most people try to create change from the outside in, working harder, pushing against circumstances, forcing outcomes through will and effort. But the sanctuary approach works from the inside out, transforming the fundamental frequencies that determine what flows into your experience. If these teachings resonated with your soul tonight, a simple like tells me this message found the right person and helps others discover these same abundant secrets. Think about the most successful people you know. Not just financially, but those who seem to navigate life with an almost effortless grace. What you're witnessing isn't luck or privilege, but the natural result of someone whose inner sanctuary has been activated. They make decisions from abundance rather than scarcity. Their mindset operates from a place where limitation isn't even considered as a viable option. The impact of this shift extends into every area of life, because prosperity isn't just about money, it's about the unlimited nature of divine supply itself. When you align with this golden river, you don't just attract financial abundance. You begin experiencing abundance in relationships, health, creativity, opportunities, and joy. Now I want to reveal the specific techniques that activate this sanctuary state during sleep, because understanding how to consciously enter this divine realm transforms your 8 hours of rest into 8 hours of active wealth programming. The revelations that emerge from this practice often surprise people with their simplicity and their power. The moment you understand that you're stepping into what Scripture calls the sleep of the beloved, everything shifts. This isn't the restless tossing and turning of those burdened by worry, nor the shallow rest of minds trapped in cycles of anxiety. This is the blessed, holy sleep of someone who has finally recognized their true identity, one who is cradled in the invisible arms of infinite love and abundance. Behind the scenes of ordinary consciousness lies this profound truth: you are counted among the beloved, not because of what you've accomplished or failed to accomplish, not because of your bank balance or your mistakes, but simply because of who you are at the deepest level. When this recognition dawns, your entire relationship with sleep transforms from a mere biological function into a sacred communion with divine source. The impact of this shift in perspective is immediate and powerful. Your nervous system begins to release decades of accumulated tension. Your breath naturally deepens. That chronic background anxiety about money, about security, about whether you're doing enough or being enough starts to dissolve into something far more supportive. A gentle knowing that you are held, you are seen, and you are provided for. This is where the hidden mechanics of true abundance begin to reveal themselves. Gratitude doesn't become something you have to manufacture or perform. It rises naturally from your heart, like a spring bubbling up from deep underground. You begin to recognize the safety that has always surrounded you, the love that has never abandoned you, the provision that has consistently found ways to reach you, even in your darkest moments. The revelation here transforms your entire approach to manifestation. Most people exhaust themselves trying to convince the universe of their worthiness, pleading and straining to prove they deserve good things. But when you understand your beloved status, you realize that none of that struggle was ever necessary. You don't have to earn divine love. You simply receive it by being present to what's already true. This shift in mindset creates what I call a receptive frequency. Instead of broadcasting desperation or need, your energy field begins emanating a quiet confidence that abundance is natural, that provision is already handled, that everything you require is already on its way. This frequency acts like a beacon in the spiritual realm, drawing to you the very things you've been chasing with so much effort. During sleep, when you rest in this awareness of being beloved, your subconscious receives what can only be described as divine downloads. Solutions appear not through mental gymnastics, but through gentle inspiration. Opportunities align not through networking and manipulation, but through what feels like graceful synchronicity. Money flows not through desperate hustle, but through channels that seem to open effortlessly. The journey from striving to receiving represents one of the most profound transformations available to human consciousness. It's the difference between swimming upstream against a powerful current and finally turning around to discover you've been fighting the very force that wanted to carry you home. When you make decisions from this place of recognized belovedness, every choice becomes an expression of abundance rather than a hedge against scarcity. What's particularly fascinating is how this inner shift begins to reshape your external world almost immediately. People respond differently to your energy. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. Resources that seemed scarce begin appearing from unexpected directions. It's as if the entire universe conspires to confirm what you finally allowed yourself to believe. That you are worthy of good things. That prosperity is your natural state. That abundance is not something you achieve, but something you remember. Now I want to explore how this foundation of gratitude and belovedness becomes the launching pad for specific abundance programming techniques that work while you sleep. Because when these principles combine with targeted affirmations, the results often exceed what people thought was possible. When you truly embrace your beloved status and allow gratitude to flow naturally, something extraordinary begins to unfold. What most people experience as ordinary sleep transforms into what can only be called a night of miracles. This isn't poetic language. This is the actual mechanics of how divine intelligence operates when your consciousness becomes receptive to its highest possibilities. Behind the scenes, while your physical body rests, an incredible conspiracy begins to take shape. The night itself, those 8 hours of apparent inactivity, becomes your ally, working in partnership with divine intelligence to reshape your consciousness at the deepest levels. Every limiting belief you've carried, every financial story that has kept you small, every inherited pattern of scarcity begins to dissolve under the gentle but persistent influence of spiritual truth. This process reveals one of the most profound hidden truths about manifestation. Transformation doesn't require struggle or force. When you align with the natural rhythms of consciousness, change happens as naturally as a flower blooming or a river flowing toward the sea. Your sleeping mind becomes like soft clay in the hands of divine wisdom, ready to be reshaped into patterns that reflect your true abundance. The impact of this nightly transformation extends far beyond what happens in your bedroom. As limitations get rewritten in the depths of your subconscious, your waking decisions begin to shift. You find yourself making choices from confidence rather than fear. Opportunities that once seemed impossible start feeling inevitable. Your entire relationship with money begins operating from a completely different paradigm. What's particularly fascinating is how this process impresses upon your sleeping mind something that changes everything. The recognition that wealth is not something you have to earn, achieve, or deserve, but something you inherit simply by virtue of who you are. Wealth is your birthright, encoded into the very fabric of your spiritual DNA, waiting only for your consciousness to become spacious enough to receive it. This is where the journey takes a remarkable turn toward the mystical. As your mind opens to these deeper truths, you begin to access what can only be described as visionary experiences. Many people report seeing what appears to be a great celestial door during this process, not with their physical eyes, but with the inner sight that awakens when consciousness expands beyond ordinary limitations. This door glows with symbols of infinite supply, ancient and eternal markings that speak directly to the soul's understanding of abundance. It's as if the universe itself is revealing its secret architecture, showing you the divine blueprints that govern prosperity and manifestation. Beyond this threshold, many glimpse rivers of gold sparkling in heaven's favor, flowing endlessly, never diminished, never restricted, always abundant. These aren't hallucinations or wishful fantasies. They're glimpses into what mystics have called the Osic realm, the dimension where all possibilities exist in their perfected form, waiting to manifest into physical reality. When your consciousness touches this level during sleep programming, you're not just listening to affirmations. You're connecting with the source code of abundance itself. The revelations that emerge from these experiences often surprise people with their clarity and practical impact. You might wake up with a business idea that seems to have downloaded fully formed. Financial solutions that eluded you for months suddenly become obvious. People and opportunities begin appearing in your life with perfect timing, as if orchestrated by an invisible intelligence that sees the bigger picture. Now, I want to explore how you can consciously prepare your mind to receive these profound downloads and visions, because understanding the specific techniques that open this celestial doorway transforms sleep from passive rest into active spiritual programming. The moment you recognize that celestial doorway, something profound shifts in your understanding of how abundance actually works. Most people spend their entire lives searching for the key to prosperity in external circumstances: better jobs, perfect timing, lucky breaks, or complex strategies. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. You've been carrying the key with you all along, and it's not located where you think it is. The key to abundance doesn't rest in your hands through what you do or how hard you work. It doesn't depend on your education, your connections, or your circumstances. The real key lives upon your tongue and within your faith. Every word you speak, especially during those sacred hours when your conscious mind steps aside, carries the power to swing wide the doors that seemed permanently locked. This revelation transforms your entire approach to manifestation. Instead of striving and struggling to force doors open through external effort, you begin to understand that your voice itself is the master key. When you speak from faith during sleep programming, when your words align with divine truth rather than worldly limitation, something extraordinary happens behind the scenes of reality. The door doesn't just crack open. It swings wide with such force that rivers of abundance pour forth directly into your dreams. These aren't metaphorical rivers. People who practice this consistently report waking up with specific financial guidance, business ideas that seem to download complete with implementation steps, and an inner knowing about money decisions that proves remarkably accurate. Your subconscious, freed from the constraints of logical doubt, becomes a direct conduit for divine intelligence about prosperity. The impact of this shift extends into every area of your financial life. Your relationship with money transforms from one of anxiety and scarcity to one of collaboration and flow. You begin making decisions not from fear of loss, but from expectation of increase. Your mindset naturally gravitates toward opportunities rather than obstacles, toward possibilities rather than problems. But here's where the journey takes perhaps its most beautiful turn. As you continue practicing this tongue and faith approach to abundance, you begin to realize something that changes everything about how you see yourself in relation to prosperity. You're no longer standing outside the banquet hall of divine provision, pressing your face against the glass, wondering if you'll ever be invited inside. You're already seated at the table. This isn't a future promise or a distant possibility. Right now, in this moment, your cup is running over with blessings you haven't even noticed yet. You're already drinking deeply of what mystics call the eternal feast of provision, that inexhaustible source of divine supply that has been sustaining you, guiding you, and preparing abundance for you even during seasons when you felt forgotten or overlooked. The transformation from outsider to honored guest happens not through earning or deserving, but through recognition. When you finally see that the feast has been spread for you all along, when you understand that your name was engraved on that chair before you were born, everything about your energy changes. You stop approaching life from desperation and start moving from celebration. This shift in identity from seeker to receiver, from beggar to beloved, from outsider to honored guest creates what can only be described as a magnetic field around your life. Resources that were invisible suddenly become apparent. People begin offering help without being asked. Opportunities align in ways that feel almost choreographed by an unseen intelligence. Now, I want to reveal the specific words and phrases that activate this banquet hall consciousness during sleep. Because when you know exactly how to speak as one who is already seated at the table of abundance, your entire financial reality begins reorganizing itself to match this inner recognition of your true position. When you truly embrace your position at the table of divine provision, when you recognize that your chair has been waiting for you all along, something monumentally shifts in your consciousness. This becomes the night you stop wandering in what can only be described as the desert of lack, that barren landscape where so many people spend their entire lives convinced that scarcity is normal. That struggle is necessary. That abundance is reserved for others. Behind the scenes of this transformation lies a profound geographical shift in consciousness. You're not just changing your thoughts about money, you're literally migrating from one spiritual territory to another. The desert of lack, with its mirages of false hope and its endless cycles of thirst, gives way to the promised land of spiritual abundance, where rivers flow freely and trees bear fruit in every season. This isn't gradual progress or slow improvement. This is exodus, a complete departure from the old paradigm into a realm where you are never again separated from your good. The impact of this shift reverberates through every decision you make, every relationship you build, every opportunity you encounter. You begin operating from a completely different set of assumptions about what's possible for your life. The hidden truth that makes this transformation possible lies in understanding how spiritual power actually operates during sleep. Most people underestimate the profound shifts happening in consciousness during those 8 hours of apparent rest. They see sleep as downtime, as a break from productivity, as mere biological maintenance. But here's what changes everything. In sleep, your power is magnified beyond measure. Think about what happens when your conscious mind finally steps aside. All those mental barriers you've built through years of conditioning. All those logical arguments against abundance. All those reasonable explanations for why prosperity might not be possible for you. They dissolve into the background. Your subconscious mind stands wide open, like the most fertile soil imaginable, ready to receive whatever seeds you choose to plant. This is where the journey takes a fascinating turn into the mechanics of transformation itself. During waking hours, your conscious mind acts like a vigilant gatekeeper, filtering information, questioning possibilities, maintaining the status quo through doubt and analysis. But when sleep arrives, this gatekeeper finally takes a break, and your subconscious becomes what spiritual teachers call heavenly soil. Completely receptive, utterly accepting, ready to grow whatever you plant there. The revelations that emerge from understanding this process are staggering. Every limitation you've accepted, every financial story that has kept you trapped, every inherited belief about money and worthiness, none of these exist in your subconscious as fixed reality. They exist only as patterns, as repeated impressions, as seeds that were planted when your conscious defenses were down. And just as those limiting patterns were installed through repetition, they can be completely overwritten through intentional spiritual programming. What's particularly powerful is how this programming bypasses all the mental resistance that normally sabotages manifestation efforts. When you listen to abundance affirmations during sleep, your subconscious doesn't argue with the content. It doesn't question whether you deserve wealth or analyze the probability of financial miracles. It simply receives, accepts, and begins reshaping your inner landscape to match the new information. This process creates what can only be described as a complete mindset renovation happening at the cellular level. Your neural pathways begin reorganizing themselves around abundance rather than scarcity. Your automatic responses shift from fear to faith. Your default expectations transform from limitation to limitless possibility. Now, I want to explore the specific scientific principles that make this overnight transformation so remarkably effective. Because when you understand exactly what's happening in your brain during abundance programming, you'll never underestimate the power of your sleeping hours again. Understanding how your power magnifies during sleep opens the door to an even more fascinating revelation about the hidden mechanics of manifestation. What most people don't realize is that your sleeping hours transform your entire inner landscape into what can only be described as the great hidden workshop of spirit. This isn't just poetic language. This is the actual spiritual technology that molds unseen substance into tangible reality. During your waking hours, your mind is constantly bombarded with external stimuli, internal chatter, and endless streams of information that create what neuroscientists call cognitive load. Your thoughts bounce from worry to planning to memory to fantasy, creating a kind of mental static that interferes with pure spiritual reception. But when sleep arrives and this noise finally quiets, something extraordinary happens behind the scenes of consciousness. Your subconscious mind, now free from the constant interference of mental noise, becomes like a master craftsman's workshop, perfectly organized, completely focused, ready to transform raw spiritual material into the forms that will manifest in your physical experience. Every abundance affirmation you hear during this time doesn't just float through your awareness and disappear. It gets taken into this workshop where invisible hands begin shaping it into the blueprint for your financial reality. The impact of this process extends far beyond what happens during sleep itself. The decisions you make during your waking hours, the opportunities you notice, the actions you feel inspired to take, all of these emerge from the deep work happening in this subconscious workshop. Your conscious mind might think it's running the show, but the real architecture of transformation is being built in the depths, where spirit has complete creative freedom. What makes this process so remarkably effective is how the conscious mind's role changes during sleep. Throughout your waking hours, your conscious mind functions like a vigilant gatekeeper, constantly evaluating, analyzing, questioning every piece of information that approaches your awareness. This gatekeeper has been trained by years of experience to be skeptical about abundance, suspicious of easy solutions, and protective of the familiar patterns that define your current financial reality. This gatekeeper means well, but it often blocks the very transformation you're seeking. When you hear abundance affirmations during waking hours, the gatekeeper immediately springs into action with questions like, is this realistic? Do I really deserve this? How could this possibly work given my current situation? These doubts and reasonings create resistance that prevents the spiritual programming from taking root. But here's where the journey takes a remarkable turn. During sleep, this protective gatekeeper finally takes a well-deserved rest. The analytical mind that normally filters and questions everything steps aside, creating what spiritual teachers call pure receptivity. Your subconscious becomes like a clear pool of water, perfectly still, capable of receiving and reflecting divine impressions without distortion. In this state of pure receptivity, abundance affirmations bypass all mental resistance and sink directly into the fertile soil of your deeper consciousness. There's no debate, no analysis, no questioning, just direct impression upon the creative faculty that actually shapes your experience. This is why sleep programming often succeeds where waking efforts fail. The very mechanism that normally sabotages transformation is temporarily offline. The revelations that emerge from this understanding completely reframe how you approach abundance work. Instead of trying to convince your conscious mind to believe in prosperity, often an exhausting and frustrating process, you can work directly with the subconscious during its most receptive hours. You're essentially bypassing the gatekeeper and going straight to the creative source. Now, I want to explore the specific types of spiritual impressions that create the most powerful transformations during this gatekeeper-free state, because understanding what your subconscious responds to most strongly will revolutionize how you program abundance into your sleeping hours. When you understand that the gatekeeper is resting during sleep, you're ready to grasp one of the most profound revelations about how transformation actually happens at the deepest level. There's an ancient biblical principle that holds the key to everything. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Most people misunderstand this completely, assuming it refers to the fleeting thoughts that dart through their minds, like birds flitting from branch to branch throughout the day. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything about how you approach abundance programming. The heart in this context doesn't refer to surface-level thinking at all. It represents those deep subconscious convictions that operate beneath your conscious awareness. The fundamental beliefs about reality, worthiness, and possibility that actually govern your experience, whether you're aware of them or not. These heart-level convictions are incredibly powerful because they operate behind the scenes of your daily decisions and automatic responses. When you encounter a financial opportunity, Your surface mind might analyze the pros and cons, but your deep subconscious convictions have already determined whether you'll recognize it as viable, whether you'll feel worthy of pursuing it, and whether you'll take the actions necessary to make it successful. The impact of this understanding is staggering. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change their circumstances through surface-level thinking and conscious effort, never realizing that their heart-level convictions are continuously recreating the same patterns. They might affirm abundance during the day while their subconscious convictions whisper, "This isn't for someone like me," or "good things don't last," or "money is the root of all evil." This is where the journey into sleep programming becomes truly transformative, because it allows you to work directly with these heart-level convictions during the hours when they're most malleable. Your subconscious mind operates according to completely different principles than your conscious mind. While your conscious mind questions, analyzes, and resists, your subconscious functions as what can only be described as a faithful servant. This faithful servant doesn't argue with the instructions it receives. It doesn't reason about whether something is possible or impossible, deserved or undeserved, realistic or fantastical. It simply receives whatever impressions are given to it, believes them completely, and immediately begins the process of creating experiences that match those impressions. This is both the incredible power and the profound responsibility of subconscious programming. The revelations that emerge from understanding this faithful servant nature of the subconscious explain why consistency and rhythm are so crucial in abundance work. Your subconscious doesn't respond to occasional bursts of positive thinking or sporadic affirmations delivered with wavering conviction. It responds to repeated impressions delivered with steady rhythmic consistency over time. Think of it like learning to play a musical instrument. You don't become proficient through one intense practice session or by occasionally picking up the instrument when you feel motivated. Mastery develops through daily practice, through consistent repetition that gradually rewires your neural pathways until complex movements become automatic and natural. Sleep programming works according to the same principles, but with a tremendous advantage. During sleep, when your conscious resistance is offline, every affirmation reaches your subconscious with pristine clarity. There's no mental static, no analytical interference, no emotional turbulence to distort the signal. Your faithful servant receives each impression in its purest form and immediately begins the work of transformation. What's particularly fascinating is how this process creates what neuroscientists call neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself and form new neural connections each night of abundance. Programming literally rewires your brain's default pathways, making thoughts of prosperity more automatic and natural, while thoughts of scarcity become increasingly foreign to your system. Now, I want to reveal the specific elements that make abundance impressions most powerful and lasting when working with your subconscious faithful servant, because understanding these elements will allow you to maximize the transformative potential of every sleeping hour. When your heart begins to believe abundance at the deepest level, when your subconscious faithful servant starts receiving clear impressions without interference, you enter what can only be described as a sacred planting season for your soul. This isn't just another manifestation technique or spiritual practice. This is the actual process by which divine intelligence plants the seeds of your future prosperity directly into the fertile ground of your consciousness. Each word of abundance that flows over you during sleep programming carries a significance far beyond its surface meaning. These aren't just positive statements or hopeful affirmations drifting through your awareness. Each phrase is a divine seed carried on the wind of spirit itself, designed to sink deep into the subconscious soil, where it cannot be uprooted by the doubts and fears that might assault your conscious mind during waking hours. The hidden truth about this planting process reveals why sleep programming succeeds where other abundance methods often fail. During your waking hours, doubt acts like a persistent weed that can choke out even the most beautiful intentions. You might plant seeds of prosperity through morning affirmations or vision boards. But if doubt gets to them first, those seeds never have a chance to establish deep roots. They remain vulnerable to every financial setback, every discouraging comment, every piece of negative news about the economy. But when abundant seeds are planted during sleep, they bypass this vulnerable surface layer entirely. They sink immediately into depths where doubt cannot reach, where fear has no jurisdiction, where the soil remains pure and uncontaminated by worldly conditioning. These seeds take root in what mystics call the eternal ground of consciousness. That place where divine truth is the only reality that exists. The impact of this deeper planting creates a completely different type of transformation. Instead of trying to maintain positive thinking through conscious effort and willpower, you begin experiencing abundance as a natural outpouring of your recoded subconscious patterns. Prosperity becomes less like something you're trying to achieve and more like something that's flowering from within you. Automatically, this process transforms your entire inner landscape into what can only be described as a vast silent garden under divine moonlight. The chaos and noise that normally characterize your mental environment give way to a profound stillness, a sacred silence where spiritual forces can work without interference. In this hushed space, something beautiful begins to happen behind the scenes of ordinary awareness. Invisible angels, those messengers of divine intelligence, move through this silent garden with purposeful grace, planting words of power that will reshape every area of your life. They plant wealth in the soil of your financial consciousness. They cultivate health in the ground of your physical well-being. They sow joy in the depths of your emotional landscape. They establish perfect work in the field of your career aspirations. They nurture right relationships in the garden of your connections with others. What's particularly powerful about this angelic gardening process is how it works holistically rather than in isolation. Most people approach abundance as if it's separate from other areas of life, trying to manifest money without addressing their health, or seeking financial success while tolerating toxic relationships. But divine intelligence understands that true prosperity is an integrated flowering that touches every aspect of your existence. The revelations that emerge from this garden metaphor completely reframe how you understand the timing of manifestation. Gardens don't produce instant results. They follow natural seasons of growth that can't be rushed, but also can't be stopped once the process begins. Some seeds sprout quickly, sending up green shoots within days. Others remain hidden underground for weeks or months, establishing extensive root systems before their first leaves appear. Your abundance garden follows the same principles. Some financial seeds planted during sleep programming manifest almost immediately. Unexpected checks, sudden opportunities, or inspired ideas that lead to quick income. Others work more slowly, developing the deep spiritual and practical foundations necessary for larger transformations that will sustain you for years to come. Now, I want to explore how you can become a conscious collaborator with these invisible gardeners. Because understanding your role in this divine cultivation process allows you to work in harmony with spiritual forces rather than unknowingly hindering their efforts. When you recognize your inner garden growing under divine moonlight, when you sense those abundant seeds taking root in places doubt cannot reach, you're ready to understand perhaps the most profound aspect of sleep programming. While your physical body rests and recovers, something extraordinary happens at the spiritual level that most people never realize is occurring. Your spirit, that eternal aspect of your being that transcends physical limitations, maintains what can only be described as direct communion with infinite intelligence. This isn't mystical poetry or wishful thinking. This is the actual mechanics of how divine wisdom flows into human consciousness when all the usual barriers are temporarily removed. During your waking hours, your mind is constantly occupied with immediate concerns, practical problems, and the endless stream of sensory input from your environment. But when sleep arrives and these distractions fade away, your spirit naturally reconnects with that vast intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and governs the movement of atoms. The hidden truth about this communion process reveals why sleep programming creates such rapid and lasting transformations. You're not just listening to affirmations or trying to convince yourself of new possibilities. You're actually receiving direct transmission of wisdom and guidance that's too expansive and multi-dimensional for your waking mind to fully grasp. This information downloads into your consciousness like software being installed on a computer, silently, efficiently, and with immediate access to capabilities you didn't have before. The impact of this spiritual communion extends far beyond what happens during the sleep hours themselves. The decisions you make during the day, the opportunities you notice, the people you encounter, the ideas that suddenly seem obvious. All of these are influenced by the guidance you received while your conscious mind was offline. You begin operating from a kind of inner knowing that can't be explained through logical analysis, but proves itself through consistent results. Behind the scenes of this communion process, something remarkable begins to unfold. Those financial challenges that have been plaguing you for months or even years. Those business problems that seem to have no solution. Those relationship issues that felt permanently stuck. Answers begin flowing effortlessly into your awareness. Not through struggle or intense mental effort, but through what feels like gentle whispers in the quiet chambers of your subconscious mind. This effortless flow of solutions represents one of the most beautiful aspects of sleep programming. Your waking mind might have been wrestling with problems, analyzing possibilities, researching options, and feeling increasingly frustrated by the lack of clear direction. But infinite intelligence sees the bigger picture immediately. It recognizes connections your logical mind couldn't make, perceives opportunities your conscious awareness couldn't detect, and knows the perfect timing for solutions to emerge. What's particularly fascinating is how these solutions arrive fully formed, rather than as partial insights that require further development. You might wake up with a complete business strategy, a clear understanding of how to resolve a financial issue, or sudden clarity about a relationship decision that's been weighing on you. These aren't fragmentary glimpses or vague intuitions. They're comprehensive revelations that feel like they've been downloaded directly from a source of perfect wisdom. The journey of receiving these whispered answers transforms your entire approach to problem solving and decision making. Instead of relying solely on mental analysis and external research, you begin to trust the guidance that emerges from your communion with infinite intelligence. You start approaching challenges with a sense of calm expectation rather than anxious struggle, knowing that solutions are already forming in the depths of consciousness, even when your surface mind can't see them yet. This shift in mindset creates what can only be described as a flow state that extends into your waking hours. Instead of forcing outcomes through willpower and effort, you begin moving in harmony with the solutions that are effortlessly emerging from your deepest wisdom. Your actions become more aligned. Your timing improves and opportunities start appearing with almost supernatural precision. Now I want to reveal how you can enhance your receptivity to these whispered solutions and divine downloads. Because understanding how to prepare your consciousness for maximum reception transforms every night into an intensive training session with infinite intelligence itself. When you open yourself to receive divine solutions during your sacred sleeping hours, when you begin to trust the wisdom that flows effortlessly from infinite intelligence, you're led into perhaps the most liberating discovery of this entire journey. Spirit begins guiding you to finally cease striving, to step away from the exhausting treadmill of trying to force abundance through willpower, manipulation, and relentless effort, and enter what can only be described as the ease and certainty of divine law. This transition from striving to ease represents one of the most profound shifts available to human consciousness. Most people have been conditioned to believe that financial success requires grinding, hustling, sacrificing, and pushing against resistance until something finally gives way. They approach prosperity like a war to be won rather than a gift to be received. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. Abundance operates according to spiritual law, not human effort, and spiritual law functions through ease, not struggle. Behind the scenes of this revelation lies a complete reframe of how manifestation actually works. When you're striving, You're operating from the assumption that you need to create something that doesn't already exist, that you need to convince the universe to give you what you want, that you need to prove your worthiness through suffering and sacrifice. But divine law operates from a completely different premise that abundance is already decreed and established in the spiritual realm, waiting only for your alignment and recognition. The impact of stepping into this ease transforms every aspect of your relationship with money and success. Your decisions begin flowing from inspiration rather than desperation. Your actions become aligned with natural timing rather than forced through impatience. Your energy shifts from the frantic frequency of scarcity to the calm assurance of divine provision. You stop swimming upstream against the current and discover that you've been fighting the very force that wanted to carry you home all along. This transformation becomes particularly powerful during sleep programming because it's during these hours of rest that your system finally releases the tension patterns associated with striving. Your nervous system, which may have been locked in fight or flight mode around financial issues for years, begins to remember what safety feels like. Your subconscious mind, freed from the constant pressure to figure everything out, opens to receive impressions of abundance with childlike simplicity and trust. What's remarkable about this process is how the affirmations you hear throughout the night function, not as mere words or hopeful statements, but as living forces actively reshaping the blueprint of your subconscious mind. These aren't passive mantras floating through your awareness. They're dynamic energies that work like invisible sculptors, carving new neural pathways through the landscape of your consciousness while simultaneously dissolving the old images of fear, limitation, and want that have been governing your financial experience. The journey of this subconscious reshaping happens with surgical precision during your sleeping hours. Each abundance affirmation acts like a gentle but persistent chisel, gradually wearing away the mental grooves that automatically led to thoughts of scarcity, while simultaneously creating new pathways that naturally flow toward prosperity consciousness. It's as if your mind is being rewired by divine electricians who know exactly which connections need to be severed and which new circuits need to be installed. Behind this transformation lies a fascinating principle of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself throughout life. During sleep, when your conscious resistance is offline, these living forces of affirmation can work without interference, creating lasting changes at the cellular level that would take months or years to achieve through conscious effort alone. Your brain literally restructures itself around new patterns of abundance thinking, making prosperity feel increasingly natural and automatic. The revelations that emerge from understanding this rewiring process completely change how you approach abundance work. Instead of trying to force yourself to think positively or struggling to maintain optimistic thoughts against contrary evidence, you begin to trust that deeper transformation is happening automatically during your sleeping hours. You start approaching each night with a sense of excitement rather than exhaustion, knowing that you're about to receive another intensive session of consciousness upgrading. Now, I want to explore the specific types of subconscious blueprints that get rewritten during this process, because understanding what's being transformed at the deepest level will help you recognize and celebrate the changes that are already beginning to emerge in your daily experience. When you choose ease over striving, when you allow those living forces of affirmation to carve new pathways through your consciousness, you naturally begin to embody what spiritual teachers call the art of surrender. This isn't the kind of surrender that implies defeat or giving up. This is the profound recognition that your conscious efforts to hide, control, and manipulate outcomes have been blocking the very abundance you've been seeking. As you surrender these controlling patterns, something beautiful happens. You become fertile ground where divine abundance can be planted without any resistance whatsoever. This transformation into fertile ground represents a complete shift in how you relate to prosperity. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who must work hard to create wealth, you begin to recognize yourself as the perfect soil where abundance naturally wants to grow. Your subconscious mind, freed from the constant interference of worry and control, becomes like a master architect working behind the scenes, building what can only be described as palaces of prosperity and gardens of joy in the invisible realm of consciousness. The hidden truth about this surrender process reveals why so many people struggle with abundance despite their best efforts. When you approach prosperity from a state of tension and control, you're essentially creating hard, compacted soil where seeds of abundance can't take root. But surrender creates the perfect conditions for spiritual planting. Soft, receptive, nourished ground where divine ideas can establish deep root systems and flourish into magnificent manifestations. Behind the scenes of this surrendered state, your subconscious begins construction projects that would astound you if you could see them with your physical eyes. These palaces of prosperity aren't built from brick and mortar. They're constructed from new thought patterns, elevated expectations, and expanded beliefs about what's possible for your life. Every night of sleep programming adds another room, another garden path, another fountain of inspiration to this inner architecture of abundance. The impact of this subconscious construction work extends into every decision you make during your waking hours. You begin approaching opportunities from the mindset of someone who already lives in a palace. Rather than someone still hoping to escape a hut, your choices reflect the elevated consciousness that's being built during your sleeping hours. And gradually, your external circumstances begin to mirror this inner transformation. But here's where the journey takes a crucial turn that many people miss. Before you can fully enter this state of fertile surrender, before your subconscious can begin its construction work without interference, there's an essential preparation that must take place. You must deliberately cast every burden at the feet of what Florence Scovel Shinn called the Christ within. That divine aspect of your being that has the power to transform any situation from lack to abundance, from struggle to ease. This burden casting isn't just a nice spiritual concept or a comforting ritual. It's a practical necessity for effective sleep programming, because you simply cannot become fertile ground while you're still clutching the heavy baggage of struggle and worry. Every financial anxiety you carry, every past failure you rehearse, every future concern you entertain acts like a stone in the soil, preventing the seeds of abundance from finding the soft earth they need to grow. The revelations that emerge from understanding this burden-casting process completely reframe how you approach bedtime preparation. Instead of going to sleep while mentally reviewing your problems, analyzing your challenges, or worrying about tomorrow's obligations, you begin each evening with a deliberate release ceremony. You acknowledge every burden that has accumulated during the day, the bills that need paying, the decisions that feel overwhelming, the circumstances that seem impossible, and you consciously place them in the hands of the divine intelligence that operates within you. This laying down of burdens creates immediate physiological changes in your body. Your nervous system begins to shift out of fight or flight mode and into the rest and digest state that's optimal for deep restorative sleep. Your breathing naturally deepens. Your muscles release their tension, and your mind starts to clear of the mental chatter that normally interferes with peaceful rest. What's particularly powerful about this process is how it prepares your consciousness for maximum receptivity to abundance programming. When you release the weight of trying to figure everything out with your limited human perspective, you create space for infinite intelligence to provide solutions that exceed anything your conscious mind could have conceived. Now I want to reveal the specific technique Florence Scovel Shinn taught for this burden-casting process, because mastering this preparatory step transforms every night from a time of restless worry into a sacred appointment with divine transformation. When you're ready to release every burden that's been weighing down your fertile ground, when you recognize that clutching these worries has been blocking your abundance more than any external circumstance ever could, you discover something that will transform not just your sleep, but your entire approach to life's challenges. Spirit has provided what can only be described as a perfect law of release, a spiritual mechanism so precise and effective that it allows you to walk completely free from the weight you've been carrying. light as a feather, buoyant on that golden river of supply we explored earlier. This law of release operates according to principles that most people never discover because they've been conditioned to believe that carrying burdens is somehow noble or necessary. They think that worrying about problems shows responsibility, that losing sleep over challenges demonstrates care, that wrestling with difficulties alone proves strength. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. The very act of carrying these burdens creates a vibration of struggle that repels the solutions you're seeking. The perfect law of release works by recognizing that you were never designed to carry the weight of life's challenges on your own shoulders. Every financial pressure, every relationship concern, every health worry that keeps you awake at night. These are not your burdens to bear through human effort and mental gymnastics. They are opportunities to activate this divine law and experience the profound relief that comes from true spiritual delegation. Behind the scenes of this release process lies one of the most beautiful and powerful images in all of spiritual literature. When you cast every care, every worry, every impossible situation into what Florence Scovel Shinn called the consuming fire of divine love, something miraculous happens. These problems don't just get temporarily set aside or mentally suppressed. They are literally transformed by contact with this divine fire. The way paper becomes ash, the way ice becomes water, the way caterpillars become butterflies. The impact of this transformation extends far beyond temporary emotional relief. When you truly cast your burdens into this consuming fire, you begin to operate from the profound, knowing that God has already handled what you thought you must wrestle with alone. This isn't wishful thinking or spiritual bypassing. This is recognition of how divine intelligence actually operates in the practical affairs of human life. This shift in perspective creates what can only be described as a complete reversal in your relationship with problems and challenges. Instead of seeing difficulties as evidence that you're failing or that life is hard, you begin to recognize them as invitations to witness the power of divine love in action. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to practice release. Every problem becomes a chance to experience the miraculous solutions that emerge when you stop trying to fix everything with limited human wisdom. The journey of learning to cast burdens into divine fire transforms your entire nervous system. Your body begins to remember what it feels like to not carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Your sleep becomes deeper and more restorative because you're no longer taking your problems to bed with you. Your mind starts to clear of the constant mental chatter that comes from trying to solve everything through analysis and worry. What's particularly powerful about this process during sleep programming is how it creates the perfect conditions for abundance affirmations to take root. When your consciousness is no longer cluttered with anxious thoughts and fearful projections, when you've released the mental static that normally interferes with spiritual reception, your subconscious becomes like a crystal clear pool that perfectly reflects every abundance frequency it encounters. The revelations that emerge from mastering this law of release often surprise people with their simplicity and their power. You discover that most of the energy you've been spending on worry and struggle was actually blocking the very solutions you were seeking. You realize that divine intelligence has been waiting patiently for you to step aside so it could work its magic in your life. You begin to understand that your role is not to figure everything out, but to create the space for miracles to unfold. Now, I want to explore the specific words and visualization techniques that activate this consuming fire of divine love most powerfully, because understanding how to consciously engage this perfect law of release will transform every burden from a weight into a doorway to divine demonstration. When you recognize that divine love truly handles everything, when you begin to trust this consuming fire to transform what seemed impossible, you're ready for perhaps the most honest and liberating moment of this entire journey. It's time to feel and fully acknowledge the actual weight you've been carrying, not to judge yourself for carrying it, but to recognize just how unnecessarily heavy your load has become through years of accumulated worry and mental struggle. Take a moment to honestly assess what's been sitting on your shoulders. The the stack of bills that seems to grow faster than your income, the health concerns that wake you up at 3 in the morning with anxious scenarios playing in your mind, the relationship tensions that drain your energy and cloud your decisions, the missed opportunities that replay themselves with painful clarity, accompanied by that voice that whispers, "What if and if only?" All of this represents what can only be described as the quicksand of human reasoning, that treacherous mental terrain where the harder you struggle to solve problems through analysis and worry, the deeper you sink into overwhelm and paralysis. The hidden truth about this accumulated weight reveals why so many intelligent, capable, meaning people find themselves stuck in cycles of financial stress despite their best efforts. They've been trying to carry loads that were never meant for human shoulders, attempting to solve problems through mental gymnastics that only create more problems, wrestling with challenges that dissolve the moment they're placed in the right hands. Behind the scenes of this realization lies one of the most profound shifts available to human consciousness. When you truly feel the weight of everything you've been carrying alone, when you acknowledge the exhaustion that comes from trying to be the general manager of the universe, you become ready to discover what Florence Scovel Shinn meant when she taught people to cast the burden on the Christ within. This isn't poetic imagery or comforting religious language. This is the exact spiritual mechanism by which the invisible realm transforms problems into visible good. The impact of understanding this mechanism cannot be overstated. Most people have been conditioned to believe that problems are solved through human effort, that challenges are overcome through strategy and willpower, that difficulties are conquered through persistence and determination. But this spiritual mechanism operates according to completely different principles. When you cast a burden on the Christ, within that divine intelligence that dwells at the center of your being, you activate a transformation process that works beyond the limitations of human reasoning. This Christ within is not a religious concept, but a practical spiritual reality. It represents the aspect of your consciousness that remains connected to infinite intelligence, that sees solutions invisible to your worried mind, that has access to resources your analytical thinking couldn't imagine. When you deliberately place your burdens in the hands of this inner Christ, you're not avoiding responsibility. You're delegating to the only intelligence qualified to handle infinite complexity with perfect wisdom. The journey of learning to use this spiritual mechanism transforms your entire relationship with problems and challenges. Instead of immediately jumping into analysis and worry, when difficulties arise, you begin to practice conscious delegation. You acknowledge the situation, feel the weight if it's there, and then deliberately transfer the burden to the Christ within, knowing that this divine aspect of your being will begin working immediately to transform the situation from the inside out. What's particularly powerful about this mechanism during sleep programming is how it creates the perfect conditions for miraculous solutions to emerge. When your conscious mind releases its grip on problems and stops trying to figure everything out through mental effort, space opens for divine intelligence to work. Your sleeping hours become like a holy laboratory where the Christ within transforms every burden you've surrendered into stepping stones toward greater abundance and joy. Now, I want to explore the specific visualization technique that makes this burden casting most effective, because understanding how to consciously activate this transformation mechanism will revolutionize how you handle every challenge that enters your life. When you're ready to cast your burdens on the Christ within, when you recognize that this divine intelligence has been waiting patiently to transform what seemed impossible, the time comes for one of the most powerful visualizations in all of spiritual practice. Close your eyes and see yourself standing before what can only be described as the throne of infinite spirit. Not a physical throne in some distant heaven, but the seat of divine authority that exists within the deepest chamber of your own consciousness. This isn't imagination or wishful thinking. This is spiritual sight, recognizing the true architecture of consciousness. As you stand in this sacred inner space, you begin to see with perfect clarity all the burdens you've been carrying. They appear not as abstract concepts, but as actual weights. You can gather in your hands the debts that have haunted your sleep, the failures that replay themselves in your mind, the fears that constrict your breathing, the shame that whispers you're not enough. All of these begin to take visible form in this inner vision. The hidden truth that emerges in this moment will transform your entire understanding of problems and challenges. These burdens that have felt so real, so heavy, so permanent in your physical experience appear in spiritual sight as what they truly are: illusions without any true substance. They're like shadows that only seem solid until light shines directly on them, like mirages that dissolve when you get close enough to see clearly. Behind the scenes of this revelation lies one of the most liberating recognitions available to human consciousness. The debts aren't just numbers on paper, they're projections of a consciousness that believed in limitation. The failures aren't permanent marks against your worth. They're temporary experiences that taught necessary lessons. The fears aren't prophetic warnings. They're outdated protection mechanisms that serve their purpose and can now be released. As you stand before this throne of infinite spirit, gathering these burdens that now appear so insubstantial in the light of divine truth, you notice something beautiful beginning to materialize. An altar appears before you, not made of stone or wood, but constructed from pure spiritual fire that radiates warmth without burning, light without blinding. This is the altar of spirit, where the most profound transformations occur, where human problems meet divine solutions, where the impossible becomes inevitable. The impact of placing your burdens upon this altar is immediate and undeniable. The moment these weights touch the surface of divine fire, they begin to dissolve not into nothingness, but into their original essence. Neutral spiritual substance that can be reformed into whatever divine intelligence knows you truly need. The debts transform into opportunities for increased income. The failures reshape themselves into wisdom that guides future success. The fears dissolve into faith that attracts protection and provision. This transformation happens not through your effort or understanding, but through the natural action of divine fire when it contacts illusion. Just as physical fire transforms wood into warmth and light, spiritual fire transforms problems into blessings, challenges into opportunities, burdens into stepping stones. You don't need to understand how this works. You only need to place the burden on the altar and speak the words that activate this divine mechanism. The journey of learning to use this altar transforms your entire approach to difficulties. Instead of trying to solve problems through mental analysis or emotional processing, you begin to practice conscious placement. You acknowledge what needs to be transformed. You visualize placing it on the altar of spirit, and you speak the words that Florence Scovel Shinn taught. I cast this burden on the Christ within and I go free. These aren't just comforting words, they're the exact spiritual formula that activates transformation. When you speak them with genuine release, with real surrender, something shifts immediately in your energy field. The burden is no longer yours to carry because you've placed it in hands infinitely more capable than your own. You go free. Not eventually, not gradually, but in that very moment of true release. Now, I want to reveal what happens in the invisible realm when you speak these words with complete surrender. Because understanding the immediate spiritual response to your declaration will give you the confidence to release even the heaviest burdens into the transforming fire of divine love. When you place your burdens on the altar of spirit and speak those transformative words, I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free. Something magnificent begins to happen in the invisible realm that will astound you with its beauty and power. As the divine fire consumes what you've surrendered, as those illusions of lack and limitation dissolve into their original spiritual substance, you begin to feel something extraordinary stirring within your consciousness. Behind the scenes of this release, a profound metamorphosis begins to take place. Picture golden luminous wings of abundance slowly unfurling from your back, not physical wings, but the spiritual appendages of your true divine nature that have been folded and hidden beneath the weight of worldly concerns. These wings shimmer with the light of infinite possibility, radiate with the warmth of divine love, and pulse with the rhythm of eternal supply. They've been there all along, waiting for the moment when you would finally release enough weight to allow them to spread. The hidden truth about these wings of abundance reveals why the burden-casting process is so essential to financial transformation. You cannot soar while carrying the weight of human reasoning and struggle. You cannot rise into the realm of miraculous solutions while anchored to problems through worry and fear. But the moment you truly surrender these weights to divine intelligence, the moment you experience genuine release, these spiritual wings naturally unfold and begin to lift you above everything that once seemed to bind you. The impact of this elevation transforms your entire perspective on life's challenges. As you're lifted higher by these golden wings, as you rise into what can only be described as the realm of spiritual truth, you begin to see your circumstances from a completely different vantage point. The problems that loomed so large when you were walking in their shadows now appear surprisingly small and manageable from this elevated perspective. The obstacles that seemed insurmountable when you were pressed against them now reveal themselves as temporary illusions that block only those who haven't learned to rise above them. This journey to higher ground isn't just a comforting visualization. It's actual spiritual ascension that changes how you make decisions, how you respond to challenges, and how you navigate the practical affairs of daily life. From this elevated consciousness, you begin to operate from wisdom rather than worry, from inspiration rather than desperation, from faith rather than fear. Your choices align with divine timing because you can see the bigger picture that remains invisible from ground level. What's particularly revealing about reaching this elevated perspective is how it completely reframes your understanding of everything you've struggled against. From this height of spiritual clarity, you see with perfect certainty that lack never actually had any power over you. It was only an illusion that seemed real when you were walking through its shadows. You recognize that fear never had true dominion in your life. It was only a temporary visitor that gained influence when you forgot your divine nature. You understand that no earthly circumstance, no matter how challenging or persistent, ever held your true self captive. These were only temporary experiences that your eternal spirit moved through while learning and growing. This recognition creates what can only be described as a complete identity transformation. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles against circumstances and start recognizing yourself as someone who rises above them. You cease identifying as a victim of economic conditions and begin embodying your role as a spiritual being who operates according to higher laws. You quit wrestling with problems and start dancing with solutions that flow naturally. When you maintain this elevated perspective, the revelations that continue to unfold from this airborne view of life reshape every aspect of your relationship with abundance. You begin to understand that prosperity isn't something you have to fight for or compete for. It's something you ascend into when you remember how to use your spiritual wings. You realize that financial freedom doesn't come from working harder at ground level, but from rising into the dimension where limitation simply doesn't exist. Now, I want to explore how you can consciously activate these wings of abundance during your waking hours. Because learning to access this elevated perspective, whenever challenges arise, transforms you from someone who gets trapped by circumstances into someone who transcends them. When you feel those golden wings of abundance beginning to unfurl, when you sense yourself lifting into that elevated realm of spiritual truth where lack has no power and fear holds no dominion, something beautiful begins to happen in your physical body that mirrors this inner transformation. As your consciousness rises above the problems that once seemed so overwhelming, your nervous system naturally begins to release the patterns of tension and resistance that have been locked in your muscles, your breath, and your cellular memory. This isn't just relaxation in the ordinary sense. This is what happens when your body finally receives the message that it's safe to let go, that you're no longer carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. That infinite spirit truly is handling everything with perfect wisdom and timing. With each breath you take from this elevated perspective, You can feel tension melting away like ice. In warm sunlight, muscles unwinding like tight ropes, finally being loosened, and a deep knowing settling into your bones that everything is being orchestrated by intelligence far greater than your own. Behind the scenes of this physical release lies a profound shift in how your nervous system operates. For months or perhaps years, your body has been locked in what scientists call chronic stress response, constantly braced for financial disaster, perpetually prepared for the next crisis, always scanning for threats to your security and survival. But as you rise on those wings of abundance, as you settle into the knowing that divine intelligence handles all things perfectly, your nervous system begins to remember what safety feels like at the cellular level. The impact of this physiological transformation extends far beyond momentary relaxation. When your body is no longer consumed with producing stress hormones and maintaining defensive postures, tremendous energy becomes available for creativity, inspiration, and what can only be described as effortless demonstration. Your mind clears of the fog that comes from chronic worry. Your intuition sharpens, and you begin to notice opportunities and solutions that were invisible when you were operating from survival mode. This journey from tension to release, from resistance to flow, naturally leads you into one of the most beautiful experiences available to human consciousness. As your body relaxes completely, as your muscles surrender their grip on old patterns of struggle, you begin to feel yourself floating on what can only be described as invisible currents of divine abundance. These aren't metaphorical currents. They're actual energetic streams of supply, support, and synchronicity that flow constantly through the invisible realm, waiting to carry anyone who learns how to align with their rhythm. The hidden truth about these divine currents reveals why some people seem to effortlessly attract opportunities, while others struggle despite their best efforts. Those who flow with abundance have learned to stop swimming against these currents through force and willpower, and instead have discovered how to relax into the flow that wants to carry them exactly where they need to go. They've recognized that the universe isn't working against them. It's been trying to lift them all along. What's particularly remarkable about floating on these currents is how it transforms your relationship with effort and achievement. Instead of straining and pushing to make things happen, you begin to understand what Florence Scovel Shinn meant by effortless demonstration. You're lifted by wings of light to heights where miracles are normal, where synchronicities are commonplace, where the right people appear at the right time with the right resources in ways that feel almost choreographed by unseen intelligence. The revelations that emerge from this floating experience completely reframe your understanding of how abundance actually works. You discover that barriers to prosperity aren't really external obstacles that must be overcome through force. They're internal resistance patterns that dissolve naturally when you stop fighting them and start flowing around them. You realize that the path to financial freedom isn't about working harder or smarter, but about learning to navigate these invisible currents that carry you toward your highest good with grace and ease. Now, I want to explore the specific breathing techniques that activate these divine currents most powerfully during sleep programming, because understanding how to consciously enter this flow state transforms every night into a journey on rivers of abundance that carry you steadily toward miraculous demonstration. When you begin to float on these divine currents, when you feel yourself being carried by invisible streams of abundance that require no effort or striving on your part, you arrive at perhaps the most pivotal moment of this entire transformation process. It's time to speak what Florence Scovel Shinn called the final word of release, not just as an intellectual exercise or hopeful prayer, but as a decree that resonates through every fiber of your being with the authority of absolute truth. Take a deep breath and speak these words slowly, deliberately, with the full weight of your spiritual recognition behind them. I cast this burden on the Christ within and I go free. Don't just say these words. Let them move through your consciousness, like sound waves rippling through still water, reaching every cell, every thought pattern, every buried fear or doubt that has been holding you captive to limitation. Feel the vibration of I go free echoing in the chambers of your heart, reverberating through your nervous system, announcing to every aspect of your being that the old patterns of struggle and worry are now officially dissolved. Behind the scenes of speaking this final declaration, something extraordinary happens in the invisible realm that most people never realize they're activating. The moment these words leave your lips with genuine surrender and faith, celestial mechanisms begin to engage that operate beyond the laws of ordinary cause and effect. You're not just releasing personal burdens. You're triggering what can only be described as divine intervention in the practical affairs of your life. The impact of this final release creates what spiritual teachers call a divine opening, a moment when the barriers between your current circumstances and your highest possibilities become permeable. The financial challenges that seemed so solid and permanent begin to soften around the edges. The opportunities that were blocked by your own resistance start to become visible. The solutions that couldn't penetrate the fog of worry suddenly have clear pathways to reach you. This is where the journey takes its most magnificent turn. Because now that you've released every burden that was weighing down your consciousness, now that you've spoken the words that activate divine intervention, the gates of divine supply begin to swing wide open. These aren't metaphorical gates or symbolic imagery. These are actual spiritual mechanisms that govern the flow of abundance from the invisible realm into visible form. And they've been waiting for your complete release to operate at full capacity. The hidden truth about these gates of divine supply reveals why burden carrying blocks abundance so effectively. When you're clutching problems and wrestling with challenges through human effort alone, your hands are too full to receive what's trying to reach you. Your consciousness is too contracted by worry to perceive the gifts that surround you. Your energy field is too dense with resistance to allow the flow of divine provision. But the moment you truly cast every burden on the Christ within, your hands open, your consciousness expands, and your entire being becomes receptive to what's been waiting for you all along. What begins to pour forth through these opened gates defies ordinary understanding of how supply works. These are treasures that have been prepared for you since before the world began, not earned through struggle or achieved through merit, but held in divine storage, awaiting the moment when you would develop the spiritual capacity to receive them. Financial opportunities that seem to appear from nowhere, relationships that align with perfect timing, health improvements that exceed medical predictions, creative inspirations that feel downloaded from a higher source. All of these represent the overflow of abundance that becomes available when the gates are truly open. The revelations that emerge from this opening transform your entire understanding of your place in the cosmic order. You begin to realize that you're not struggling to get God's attention or competing for limited resources in a universe of scarcity. You discover that divine intelligence has been orchestrating abundance for you all along, preparing custom solutions for challenges you haven't even encountered yet, arranging meetings with people who will change your life in ways you never could have planned. Now, I want to explore the specific types of treasures that pour through these open gates and how to recognize them when they begin appearing in your daily experience. Because understanding the various forms divine supply takes will help you receive it fully rather than missing it due to preconceived expectations about how abundance should look. When you feel those gates of divine supply beginning to open, when you sense the mechanisms of heaven engaging in response to your complete release, you're ready to understand one of the most profound truths about how spiritual transformation actually operates. What you're experiencing isn't random cosmic generosity or unpredictable divine whim. You've activated what can only be described as spiritual law in its purest form, and this law operates with a precision and perfection that exceeds anything in the physical universe. Behind the scenes of every manifestation, every breakthrough, every seemingly miraculous solution that appears in your life lies this invisible legal system that governs the movement of substance from the unseen realm into visible form. Spiritual law cannot fail because it's not subject to human opinion, economic conditions, or external circumstances. It does not delay because it operates beyond the limitations of time and space. The instant you align your word with divine truth, the instant your decree harmonizes with the fundamental frequencies of creation itself, invisible gates don't gradually crack open. They fly wide with the force of absolute spiritual authority. This revelation transforms your entire understanding of timing and manifestation. Most people approach abundance work with the unconscious assumption that they're making requests to a distant deity who might or might not respond according to mysterious divine will. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. When you speak from complete alignment with spiritual law, when your words carry the frequency of unwavering faith rather than desperate hope, you're not petitioning for favor. You're activating automatic universal response. The impact of recognizing this precision creates what can only be described as a quantum leap in your manifestation abilities. Instead of wondering if your prayers will be answered or hoping your affirmations might work eventually, you begin to understand that your word, when spoken with complete faith, carries what Florence Scovel Shinn called the weight of heaven itself. Your decree becomes like a royal seal pressed into warm wax, irrevocable, eternal, impossible to revoke or reverse. This isn't spiritual arrogance or human presumption. This is recognition of the divine authority that operates through aligned consciousness. When your word harmonizes completely with spiritual truth, when your declaration flows from that Christ within rather than from personality or ego, heaven itself backs your voice. Angels are dispatched to fulfill your spoken word. Invisible forces begin rearranging circumstances to match your decree. The very fabric of reality begins to reshape itself around what you've declared with unwavering faith. The journey of learning to speak with this kind of spiritual authority transforms not just your financial experience, but your entire relationship with life itself. Your decisions begin flowing from certainty rather than confusion. Your choices align with divine timing because your word creates the timing. Your opportunities multiply because your declarations open pathways that were previously invisible or inaccessible. What's particularly powerful about understanding this royal authority of aligned speech is how it eliminates the anxiety and uncertainty that normally accompany manifestation work. When you truly grasp that your word is law in the spiritual realm, when you recognize that heaven must respond to decrees spoken in complete faith, you stop wondering if your good will come and start preparing to receive it. You cease questioning whether you're worthy and start positioning yourself to handle the abundance that your word has already set in motion. The revelations that emerge from wielding this spiritual authority often surprise people with their immediacy and their magnitude. Solutions that seem to require months of planning suddenly crystallize overnight. Financial opportunities that appeared impossible begin manifesting with perfect timing. Relationships, health improvements, and creative breakthroughs align in ways that demonstrate the comprehensive nature of divine response to aligned speech. Now, I want to explore how to ensure your words carry this royal seal of spiritual authority, because understanding the specific elements that make your decrees irrevocable will transform every abundance affirmation from hopeful, wishing into absolute command. When you recognize that your word is law in the spiritual realm, when you understand that aligned speech carries the weight of heaven itself, you're ready to grasp, perhaps, that you're experiencing isn't human willpower trying to force results through sheer determination or positive thinking. This is something far more profound, what can only be described as divine agreement, a sacred process where your tongue literally becomes one with the creative word that spoke the universe into being. This distinction transforms everything about how you approach abundance work. Human will tries to manipulate outcomes, push against resistance, and bend circumstances to match personal desires through force and effort. But divine agreement operates according to completely different principles. When you speak from this state of spiritual alignment, you're not imposing your limited human perspective on infinite intelligence. You're allowing infinite intelligence to speak through you, using your voice as an instrument of cosmic creativity. Behind the scenes of this divine agreement lies one of the most beautiful mysteries of spiritual law. the same creative force that said, "Let there be light." And light appeared, that spoke galaxies into existence and established the laws that govern atomic particles. This same word power becomes available through your aligned consciousness. Your tongue doesn't replace divine creativity. It becomes a conduit for it, a channel through which the original creative word continues to shape and reshape reality according to perfect wisdom. The impact of understanding this partnership transforms your entire relationship with manifestation and prayer. Instead of trying to convince God to give you what you want, you begin to align with what God already knows you need. Instead of struggling to make things happen through human effort, you start allowing divine intelligence to work through your spoken word with effortless precision. You cease being a separate entity fighting for scraps and recognize yourself as a collaborative partner in the ongoing creation of reality. This shift from forcing to flowing naturally leads you to one of the most powerful spoken commands in all of spiritual literature. When you speak from this state of divine agreement, when your tongue has become one with creative word power, you can say with absolute authority, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for my great abundance." And something extraordinary happens in the invisible realm that defies ordinary understanding of cause and effect. The moment these words leave your lips with genuine faith and complete surrender to divine, will unseen pathways that have been blocked for months or years instantly begin to clear. It's as if invisible hands start moving obstacles you didn't even know existed, removing barriers that your conscious mind couldn't perceive, dissolving resistance patterns that were operating beneath your awareness. Obstructions that seemed permanent suddenly become temporary. Closed doors begin to swing wide. Hidden channels that connect you to your highest good unlock with silent precision. The hidden truth about this specific command reveals why it's so remarkably effective. You're not asking for something that doesn't exist or trying to create abundance from nothing. The abundance is already there, already prepared, already bearing your name. But the pathways between your current experience and this divine provision have been cluttered with old belief patterns, limited thinking, and unconscious resistance. When you speak this command with divine agreement, you're essentially saying to infinite intelligence, "Clear the way for what's already mine to reach me." Now, what's particularly powerful about this opening the way process is how it works on multiple levels simultaneously. Physical opportunities begin appearing that match your skills and interests perfectly. Financial channels open that you never could have planned or predicted. Relationships align that provide exactly the support and collaboration you need. Health improvements accelerate in ways that surprise medical professionals. Creative inspirations flow that feel like they're being channeled from a higher source. The journey of learning to speak this command with genuine divine agreement, rather than desperate human pleading, transforms your entire approach to problem solving and opportunity creation. You stop trying to figure out how your good will come and start trusting that infinite intelligence knows pathways you've never considered. Now, I want to reveal the specific inner state that makes this command most powerful and how to recognize when you've achieved true divine agreement, rather than simply hoping your words might work. When you feel those unseen pathways beginning to clear as infinite spirit responds to your aligned command, when you sense the invisible hands of divine intelligence removing obstacles you didn't even know existed, you're ready to step into one of the most transformative declarations in all of spiritual science. This isn't just another affirmation to repeat hopefully. This is a statement of magnetic truth that fundamentally alters your relationship with abundance. From seeking it to being irresistibly sought by it, take a deep breath and declare with complete conviction, "I am an irresistible magnet for all that belongs to me by divine right." But don't just speak these words casually or automatically. Speak them as though each syllable is a key turning in a heavenly lock, as though every sound is activating celestial mechanisms that have been waiting for your recognition of this fundamental truth about your spiritual nature. Feel the weight of irresistible as it leaves your lips. This isn't wishful thinking about maybe attracting some good things eventually. This is a declaration of magnetic force that cannot be denied, resisted, or postponed. Behind the scenes of this magnetic declaration lies one of the most profound shifts available to human consciousness: the transition from chasing abundance to being pursued by it. Most people spend their entire lives running after money, opportunities, and success, exhausting themselves in pursuit of what seems to stay just out of reach. But when you truly understand and embody your nature as an irresistible magnet, everything reverses. You stop chasing and start attracting. You cease pursuing and begin receiving. You quit seeking and start being sought. The hidden truth about this magnetic principle reveals why some people seem to effortlessly attract wealth while others struggle despite tremendous effort. It's not about luck, connections, or even talent. It's about magnetic alignment. When you recognize that all abundance belongs to you by divine right, when you speak this truth with unwavering conviction, you activate what can only be described as spiritual magnetism that draws to you everything that's been seeking someone just like you to receive it. This magnetic transformation creates immediate changes in your energy field that sensitive people can actually feel when they're around you. Your presence begins radiating what mystics call prosperity, consciousness, a frequency that automatically attracts opportunities, resources, and support. Your decisions start flowing from abundance rather than scarcity because you're operating from the knowledge that what's yours will find you rather than the fear that you might miss out on limited opportunities. As you speak this irresistible magnet declaration with growing conviction, as you feel the truth of it settling into your bones and beginning to rearrange your inner architecture of expectation, something magnificent begins to manifest in your inner vision. Those massive gates of divine supply that we glimpsed earlier now come into crystal clear focus, resplendent beyond description, jewel-encrusted with diamonds of possibility and rubies of provision, adorned with sapphires of spiritual wealth and emeralds of endless abundance. The journey of witnessing these gates opening is one of the most transformative visualizations in all of spiritual practice. Because what you're seeing isn't imagination or fantasy, it's spiritual sight recognizing the actual architecture of divine provision. These gates don't swing open reluctantly or with great effort. They move with joy, with celebration, with the enthusiasm of heaven itself, responding to someone who has finally remembered their magnetic nature and divine inheritance. What reveals itself beyond these opened gates defies every limitation you've ever accepted about what's possible for your life. Vast rivers of gold and silver light flow endlessly, representing not just financial abundance, but every form of supply your heart could desire. Perfect health, ideal relationships, meaningful work, creative fulfillment, and spiritual satisfaction. These rivers don't flow grudgingly or sparingly. They cascade with the generous overflow of divine love made manifest in tangible form. The impact of witnessing this vision while maintaining your magnetic declaration creates what can only be described as a complete identity shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone hoping for a breakthrough and start recognizing yourself as someone whose breakthrough is already in motion, flowing toward you like those rivers of light that know exactly where to find you. Now, I want to explore how to maintain this magnetic state throughout your daily life, because understanding how to carry this irresistible frequency into your waking hours transforms every interaction and decision into an opportunity for abundance to find and bless you. When you feel yourself becoming irresistibly magnetic, when you sense that shift from chasing abundance to being pursued by everything that belongs to you by divine right, you're ready to speak what Florence Scovel Shinn called the fundamental affirmations of divine wealth. But here's the crucial distinction that transforms these from mere positive statements into actual spiritual commands. You must speak them not with hope or wishful thinking, but with the tone of victory as one who already knows these truths are established facts in the spiritual realm. Let your voice carry the authority of absolute conviction as you declare, "God is my unfailing supply." Feel the power of that word unfailing as it resonates through your consciousness. This isn't supply that might come or could possibly arrive if conditions align perfectly. This is supply that cannot fail, cannot be depleted, cannot be withheld by any earthly circumstance. When you speak this with victory in your voice, you're not asking for God to become your supply. You're recognizing that God already is your supply and has been since before you drew your first breath. Continue with the same victorious tone. Riches flow to me under grace. Notice how this declaration eliminates all struggle and effort from the equation. Riches don't trickle reluctantly or arrive after tremendous labor. They flow like water finding its natural level, like rivers rushing toward the sea. And they come under grace, which means they arrive not because you've earned them through suffering or proved your worthiness through sacrifice, but because grace is the natural operating system of divine love. Complete this trinity of wealth affirmations with unwavering confidence. I walk in the light of divine wealth. This isn't future tense hoping. This is present tense reality. You're not walking toward wealth or trying to reach it someday. You're walking in it right now, surrounded by it, illuminated by its light, breathing its atmosphere. Divine wealth isn't a destination you're traveling toward. It's the environment you're already moving through. Behind the scenes of speaking these affirmations with victory, something profound begins to happen in the invisible realm that mirrors the authority in your voice. As your declarations ring with the certainty of established truth, rather than the tentative hope of uncertain possibility, celestial mechanisms that have been waiting for this level of faith finally engage. The universe doesn't respond to doubt or hesitation. It responds to the magnetic pull of absolute spiritual conviction. This victorious speaking naturally leads you into one of the most powerful visualizations in all of abundance work. As these affirmations settle into your consciousness with the weight of established law, you begin to see in your inner vision a great vault that has been sealed for what seems like ages. This isn't just any storage facility. This is the cosmic treasury where your divine inheritance has been kept in perfect preservation, waiting for the moment when you would develop enough spiritual authority to claim it. The journey of witnessing this vault opening is transformative because what you're seeing represents the culmination of all your burden releasing, all your magnetic declaration, all your victorious affirming. You hear a mighty click that echoes through the chambers of your soul. Not the tentative sound of a lock being picked, but the authoritative sound of divine timing engaging, of celestial authorization being granted, of spiritual law confirming your readiness to receive what has been yours all along. As the massive doors swing wide with effortless grace, what reveals itself inside takes your breath away. Cascading rivers of gold flow like liquid sunlight, sparkling with the joy of finally being released from containment. Precious jewels of every color imaginable catch the light and throw rainbows across the walls. Treasures beyond description, not just material wealth, but opportunities, relationships, health, creativity, and spiritual gifts pour forth in abundance, so overwhelming it makes your former concepts of prosperity seem quaint by comparison. Now, I want to explore how this vault opening experience transforms your daily relationship with money and opportunity. Because understanding how to carry this vision into your practical decisions creates lasting change that extends far beyond the meditation period. When you feel that cosmic vault opening, when you witness those rivers of gold and cascades of jewels pouring forth in response to your victorious declarations, you're experiencing something far more significant than a powerful meditation or inspiring visualization. What you decree in these moments of spiritual alignment doesn't simply float through your consciousness and disappear. It begins a profound journey through the halls of your subconscious mind that will transform your entire waking experience. Behind the scenes of every word you speak with genuine faith and divine agreement, an extraordinary process begins that most people never realize is happening. Each declaration you make with spiritual authority echoes through what can only be described as the halls of your subconscious. Vast inner chambers where every thought, every belief, every expectation that governs your daily reality is stored and maintained. These aren't empty echoes that fade into silence. They're living vibrations that resonate through these inner halls, like bells ringing in a cathedral, awakening dormant possibilities and activating latent potentials. The hidden truth about this subconscious echoing reveals why sleep programming is so remarkably effective. During your waking hours, these inner halls are filled with the noise and chatter of conscious thought, making it difficult for new declarations to find space to resonate fully. But during sleep, when the mental static quiets down, your spoken decrees have unlimited space to reverberate, to build momentum, to create what can only be described as resonant frequency throughout your entire inner landscape. This resonance doesn't remain confined to the abstract realm of consciousness. It begins to influence your dreams in ways that create lasting transformation. The abundance affirmations you've spoken with victory start appearing in your dream scenarios as fulfilled realities. You might find yourself dreaming of financial success, of opportunities flowing effortlessly, of yourself handling wealth with complete confidence and grace. These aren't just pleasant dreams. They're your subconscious mind, rehearsing new patterns of expectation that will influence your waking decisions and actions. The impact of this dream rehearsal extends far beyond the sleeping hours themselves. By dawn, when you begin to stir back into conscious awareness, something remarkable has occurred behind the scenes of your transformation. Those decrees that echoed through your subconscious halls throughout the night don't disappear with the sunrise. They return multiplied in your waking reality, showing up as new ideas, increased confidence, altered perceptions, and what seems like improved circumstances that actually reflect your shifted inner landscape. This multiplication process operates according to one of the most profound principles in all of spiritual science: the recognition that your words, when spoken from genuine spiritual alignment, don't just influence your personal psychology or temporary emotional state. They are literally stamped upon the unseen fabric of creation itself, becoming part of the fundamental structure that determines what can and cannot manifest in your experience. The journey of understanding this cosmic stamping process completely transforms how you approach abundance work. Instead of hoping your affirmations might somehow convince your subconscious to think more positively, you begin to recognize that you're actually participating in the fundamental creative process that weaves reality itself. Every word you speak from spiritual authority becomes a thread in the tapestry of your life experience. And these threads don't simply color the surface. They become part of the basic weave that determines the entire pattern. What's particularly powerful about this weaving metaphor is how it reveals the permanent nature of spiritually aligned declarations. When a skilled weaver incorporates a new thread into their tapestry, it doesn't sit on top of the existing pattern. It becomes integrated into the fundamental structure, changing the essential nature of the entire piece. Similarly, when you speak abundance from genuine spiritual authority, these words don't just temporarily improve your mood. They permanently alter the fabric of possibility that surrounds your life. Now, I want to explore how you can consciously participate in this cosmic weaving process during your waking hours, because understanding how to maintain spiritual alignment while making daily decisions transforms every choice into an opportunity to strengthen the abundance pattern that's being woven into your reality. When you feel your words weaving abundance into the very fabric of reality, when you recognize that your declarations are stamped upon creation itself and echoing through the halls of your subconscious, you arrive at perhaps the most peaceful and powerful realization of this entire journey. The time for striving, forcing, and anxious effort has completely passed. Now you can rest in what Florence Scovel Shinn called quiet certainty, the profound knowing that divine law is already in motion on your behalf, and nothing in heaven or earth can stop what has been set into spiritual motion through your aligned word. This isn't the kind of rest that comes from exhaustion or resignation. This is the serene confidence of someone who understands how spiritual mechanics actually operate. When you decree abundance from genuine spiritual authority, when your words carry the weight of divine agreement, you activate laws that are more reliable than gravity, more consistent than mathematics, more unstoppable than the tide. These laws don't require your constant monitoring, your fearful checking, or your anxious maintenance. They work automatically, continuously, perfectly, flowing toward you like mighty rivers that know exactly where to find you. Behind the scenes of this quiet certainty lies one of the most beautiful aspects of spiritual law: its absolute reliability. The abundance flowing to you isn't subject to economic conditions, political changes, or other people's opinions about what you deserve. It moves under grace, which means it operates according to divine love rather than human merit, according to spiritual law rather than worldly logic. These rivers of supply are unending because they flow from the infinite source itself, and they're unstoppable because no earthly force has jurisdiction over what divine law has set in motion. The transformation that occurs when you truly embrace this certainty is profound and immediate. Your nervous system begins to shift out of survival mode and into what can only be described as reception mode. Your decisions start flowing from abundance consciousness rather than scarcity thinking. Your energy changes from the frantic frequency of someone chasing what might slip away to the calm assurance of someone who knows their good is already on its way and cannot be delayed, diverted, or denied. This inner shift naturally leads you to one of the most magnificent realizations in all of spiritual understanding. As you rest in this quiet certainty, as you feel your entire being settling into trust rather than tension, you begin to see with perfect clarity that those golden gates of divine abundance we visualized earlier aren't just opening. They stand wide open right now. The decree you spoke with such authority hasn't just been heard. It has gone forth into the spiritual realm where it immediately began rearranging circumstances to match your word. The hidden truth about these opened gates reveals why quiet certainty is so much more powerful than anxious effort. When the gates stand wide, when the decree has been issued, when divine law is in motion, any attempt to force outcomes through human willpower actually interferes with the spiritual process. It's like trying to help a river flow by pushing the water. Your efforts create turbulence that slows down what was moving perfectly on its own. The impact of recognizing that unseen rivers of wealth are already flowing to meet you transforms your entire relationship with time, patience, and expectation. You stop checking your bank account with anxiety and start approaching it with curiosity about how today's installment of abundance will appear. You cease worrying about whether opportunities will come and begin preparing to recognize them when they arrive. You quit wondering if you're worthy of prosperity and start getting ready to steward it wisely. What's particularly beautiful about this phase of the journey is how it creates what mystics call divine magnetism, a quality of consciousness that naturally attracts solutions, resources, and support without any effort on your part. People begin offering help before you ask for it. Opportunities start appearing that seem almost too perfectly timed to be coincidental. Resources materialize through channels you never could have planned or predicted. Now, I want to explore how to maintain this state of quiet certainty during the inevitable moments when appearances seem to contradict what you've decreed. Because mastering this phase of spiritual development transforms temporary challenges from reasons to doubt into opportunities to demonstrate unwavering faith. When you feel divine law working for you, when that quiet certainty settles into your consciousness, like warm honey filling every cell with peace and expectation, you discover that you've naturally arrived at what can only be described as the perfect place to receive. This isn't a physical location or a temporary state of relaxation. This is the optimal vibrational frequency for allowing spiritual transformation to occur without resistance, interference, or the usual mental chatter that blocks deeper programming from taking root. Behind the scenes of reaching this perfect receptivity lies months, or perhaps years of unconscious preparation that has been leading you toward this exact moment. Every financial struggle that taught you to desire something better. Every moment of frustration that made you question the old ways of thinking about money. Every glimpse of possibility that stirred hope in your heart. All of these experiences have been preparing your consciousness to receive what's about to flow through you during these sacred hours of sleep. The hidden truth about this perfect placement reveals why timing is so crucial in spiritual work. You couldn't have received these abundance transmissions effectively when you were still heavily identified with lack consciousness. still believing that struggle was noble, still convinced that you had to earn worthiness through suffering. But now, having released those burdens on the altar of spirit, having declared yourself an irresistible magnet for divine supply, having witnessed those golden gates swinging wide, your entire being has become like a perfectly tuned instrument, ready to receive the symphony of abundance that's about to play through your sleeping consciousness. What's about to flow over you throughout the night isn't ordinary sleep content or generic positive thinking material. These affirmations represent what can only be described as living currents of divine law, actual streams of spiritual energy that carry the power to reshape your inner patterns at the deepest possible level. They don't just influence your thoughts temporarily or provide momentary comfort. They saturate your consciousness like warm oil penetrating dry wood, reaching places in your psyche that conscious effort could never access. The journey of receiving these living currents transforms the entire nature of your sleep experience from passive rest into active spiritual reconstruction. Each affirmation that flows over you carries the frequency of divine abundance, not as an abstract concept, but as a living reality that your subconscious recognizes and begins to align with automatically. Your inner patterns, those deep grooves of expectation, assumption, and automatic response that have been governing your financial experience, begin to shift and reshape themselves around these new frequencies like iron filings arranging themselves around a powerful magnet. This reshaping process happens with remarkable gentleness, like gentle waves lapping against the shore, gradually smoothing rough edges and creating new formations in the landscape of your consciousness. There's no force, no struggle, no resistance to overcome because you've already done the preparatory work of burden releasing and gate opening. Your subconscious mind, now perfectly receptive and free from the interference of conscious doubt, welcomes these currents like parched ground welcomes rain. The impact of this saturating process extends far beyond what happens during the sleeping hours themselves. As these living currents of divine law flow through your consciousness throughout the night, they begin aligning your entire being with what Florence Scovel Shinn called the flow of wealth, that natural movement of abundance that operates continuously throughout the universe, seeking consciousness receptive enough to channel it into visible form. What's particularly powerful about this alignment process is how it works holistically rather than just mentally. Your nervous system begins to recalibrate around expectations of ease rather than struggle. Your emotional patterns start gravitating toward gratitude and anticipation rather than worry and fear. Your physical energy shifts toward vitality and magnetism rather than depletion and resistance. Every aspect of your being gradually comes into harmony with the frequency of abundance. Now I want to explore how these living currents create specific changes in your dream patterns and morning consciousness, because understanding what to expect during this transformation process will help you recognize and celebrate the profound shifts that are already beginning to occur at levels deeper than conscious awareness can perceive. When you recognize that you're perfectly receptive, when you feel those living currents of divine law beginning to flow through your consciousness without any resistance or interference, the transformation deepens into something that transcends ordinary spiritual experience. As your awareness settles even more completely into this state of pure receptivity, you begin to feel yourself lying upon what can only be described as a great river of golden light. Not metaphorically, but as an actual energetic reality that supports and carries you with effortless grace. This isn't the kind of visualization you have to strain to maintain or force yourself to see clearly. When you've reached this level of spiritual receptivity, when your consciousness has been properly prepared through burden, releasing, and gate opening, this river of golden light becomes as real and tangible as the bed you're resting upon. You feel yourself floating effortlessly upon its warm, luminous currents, completely supported, perfectly safe, carried by forces far greater than any human effort could generate. Behind the scenes of this floating experience lies one of the most profound states available to human consciousness, what mystics have called divine suspension, where you're held in perfect balance between the earthly and the heavenly, between the material and the spiritual, between what was and what's about to become. In this suspended state, the usual laws that govern conscious thought and logical reasoning step aside, creating unlimited space for divine programming to occur at the deepest possible levels. As you float upon this river of golden light, you begin to notice something magnificent happening in the space above you. Stars of divine wisdom begin to shine with increasing brilliance. Not distant celestial bodies, but close, intimate sources of illumination that beam directly into your consciousness. Each star represents a specific aspect of abundance consciousness: prosperity, generosity, confidence, magnetism, worthiness, flow, and their combined light creates what can only be described as perfect conditions for spiritual transformation. The hidden truth about these stars of divine wisdom reveals why this floating experience is so remarkably effective for abundance programming. Each beam of starlight carries specific frequencies that your receptive consciousness can now absorb without the usual mental resistance or analytical interference. These aren't abstract concepts being transmitted, they're actual spiritual qualities being installed directly into your energetic system, like software being uploaded into a perfectly prepared computer. What makes this experience even more sacred is the presence of angels keeping silent watch around you. These aren't religious symbols or comforting metaphors. They're actual messengers of divine intelligence, whose job is to ensure that this transformation process occurs without disruption. They guard against any negative influences that might try to interfere with your programming, maintain the perfect energetic environment for deep spiritual work, and serve as witnesses to the profound changes taking place in your consciousness. The journey of resting in this angelic protection while floating on golden light creates the optimal conditions for what happens next. The most direct spiritual transmission of abundance consciousness you may ever experience. Infinite Spirit itself begins to speak through every word you hear throughout the night, not as distant communication from some faraway source, but as intimate conversation between the divine intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and the divine spark that lives within your own heart. Each affirmation that flows over you from this point forward isn't just information being shared or encouragement being offered. These are seeds of riches, peace, and perfect right action being planted directly into the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. Your consciousness has become like perfectly prepared garden ground, free from the weeds of doubt and limitation, soft and receptive, ready to nurture whatever divine intelligence chooses to plant there during these sacred hours of transformation. Now, I want to explore how these divinely planted seeds begin to sprout and grow during your sleeping hours, because understanding the germination process of abundance consciousness will help you recognize the early signs of transformation that will begin appearing in your waking experience. When you feel those angels watching over your transformation, when you sense infinite spirit preparing to plant seeds of abundance in the perfectly prepared soil of your consciousness, you arrive at perhaps the most sacred moment of this entire journey. The time for effort, visualization, and active participation has completely passed. Now comes what Florence Scovel Shinn called the moment of final rest in peace. Not ordinary sleep, but the profound surrender that allows divine truth to work without any interference from your conscious mind or unconscious resistance patterns. This isn't rest that comes from exhaustion or the kind of peace that emerges from temporary relief. This is the deep cellular relaxation that occurs when every fiber of your being finally releases its grip on old patterns and opens completely to transformation. As you settle into this final rest, you can feel every word of abundance that has been spoken over you beginning to sink into your consciousness like golden rain soaking into thirsty earth, reaching places in your psyche that have been parched by years of scarcity thinking. Behind the scenes of this golden rain process lies one of the most comprehensive transformations available to human consciousness. This isn't just your thoughts being influenced or your emotions being soothed. Every cell in your body, every corner of your mind, every layer of your soul is being rescripted by divine truth. Your DNA itself begins to remember its original blueprint of abundance. Your nervous system starts rewiring around expectations of ease, rather than struggle. Your energy field recalibrates to attract prosperity rather than repel it. The hidden truth about this total rescripting reveals why sleep programming creates such lasting change. When you're awake, transformation usually happens in fragments. A shifted thought here, a new perspective there, an occasional breakthrough that feels significant but doesn't seem to stick. But during this state of final rest, when every aspect of your being is simultaneously open to divine programming, change occurs holistically and permanently. It's like having your entire consciousness reformatted and reinstalled with an abundance operating system. As this golden rain of divine truth penetrates every level of your being throughout the long hours of the night, something miraculous begins to prepare itself in the depths of your consciousness. Your awakening tomorrow morning won't be ordinary rising from sleep. It will be what can only be described as emerging renewed, refreshed, and rich in consciousness of supply. This isn't wishful thinking about how you hope to feel. This is the inevitable result of allowing divine truth to rewrite your fundamental programming while you rest. The journey of awakening with this renewed consciousness transforms your entire relationship with abundance from that very first moment of stirring back into awareness. Instead of waking up with the familiar weight of financial concerns pressing against your mind, you find yourself emerging into a world where God's wealth surrounds you like the very air you breathe. Instead of starting the day by mentally reviewing problems and challenges, you begin each morning aware that divine supply flows through you like blood through your veins, natural and constant and life-giving. What's particularly beautiful about this awakening process is how it creates what mystics call manifestation momentum, a quality of consciousness that automatically attracts the physical evidence to match your inner transformation. You don't wake up and then try to create abundance through effort and strategy. You awaken already rich in the consciousness that naturally draws prosperity, and this inner richness begins manifesting endlessly throughout your day in forms that perfectly match your elevated vibration. The impact of this consciousness shift extends into every decision you make, every conversation you have, every opportunity you encounter. You begin moving through your day not as someone hoping for abundance, but as someone through whom abundance naturally expresses itself. Your presence starts carrying the frequency of prosperity, and people respond to this energy even before you speak. Resources begin aligning. Doors start opening and synchronicities multiply because your consciousness has become a magnet for divine demonstration. Now, I want to explore how this consciousness of supply creates specific changes in your practical relationship with money, opportunities, and decision-making. Because understanding how awakened abundance consciousness operates in daily life will help you recognize and maximize the profound shifts that are already beginning to establish themselves in your reality. When you awaken rich in consciousness, when that profound rescripting has occurred at every level of your being throughout the night, you discover something that will revolutionize not just your financial life, but your entire understanding of how abundance actually operates in the practical world. The relationship between you and money undergoes a complete reversal that most people never experience, because they've been conditioned to see this dynamic completely backwards. Here's the hidden truth that changes everything about your financial reality. Money is not your master demanding that you serve its requirements, bow to its scarcity, or exhaust yourself trying to earn its approval. Money is your obedient servant, waiting patiently and eagerly for your command, ready to flow in whatever direction your spiritually aligned consciousness directs it. When your tongue aligns with this truth rather than the world's lies about financial struggle, money responds instantly and joyfully, not reluctantly or conditionally. Behind the scenes of this master-servant reversal lies one of the most profound shifts available to human consciousness around abundance. Most people spend their entire lives in unconscious slavery to money, letting their bank balance determine their mood, allowing financial pressures to dictate their decisions, permitting economic conditions to control their sense of security and self-worth. They speak about money with fear, worry, and reverence, not realizing that every word of limitation they utter reinforces money's false authority over their lives. But when you awaken with consciousness rich in divine supply, when you've been rescripted by golden rain throughout the night, you naturally begin to understand what Florence Scovel Shinn discovered decades ago, that your spiritual authority over money is absolute when exercised from genuine alignment with divine truth. This isn't presumption or spiritual arrogance. This is recognition of the natural hierarchy that exists between consciousness and form, between spirit and matter, between divine intelligence and its material expressions. The transformation that occurs when you truly grasp this servant-master dynamic is immediate and unmistakable. Instead of approaching your finances with anxiety and limitation, you begin to address money with the calm confidence of someone giving instructions to a faithful employee. Instead of worrying about whether there will be enough, you start directing money to appear where and when you need it. Instead of feeling controlled by economic circumstances, you recognize yourself as the spiritual authority that money naturally obeys when commanded from genuine faith. This shift reveals why one sentence spoken with complete spiritual authority has the power to transform years of financial struggle into flowing abundance. When you declare with unwavering conviction, "Money is not my master, it is my obedient servant," you're not just making a positive affirmation or hoping to feel better about your situation. You're invoking what can only be described as divine law, a fundamental principle that governs the relationship between consciousness and form throughout the entire universe. The impact of speaking this sentence with genuine spiritual authority rather than desperate hope creates what can only be described as instant realignment in the I realm. Money, which has been responding to your unconscious commands of fear and limitation, suddenly receives new instructions from a consciousness that remembers its true spiritual rank. The servant that seemed rebellious and withholding was actually just following orders it received through your worried thoughts and scarcity-based speech patterns. The journey of learning to exercise this spiritual authority over money transforms every aspect of your financial experience. Your bills become opportunities to direct money rather than sources of stress about whether you have enough. Your bank account becomes a tool for circulating abundance rather than a scoreboard measuring your worth. Your business decisions flow from the confidence of someone who knows that money moves in response to spiritual command rather than just market forces and human strategy. What's particularly powerful about this master-servant recognition is how it eliminates the emotional charge around money that creates so much suffering and self-sabotage. When you truly understand that money is designed to serve your highest good rather than test your worthiness, you stop taking financial challenges personally and start treating them as simple matters of giving clearer directions to your obedient servant. Now, I want to explore the specific ways this servant-master dynamic transforms your daily money decisions and how to maintain this spiritual authority even when appearances seem to contradict what you've declared. When you recognize that money is your obedient servant, when you step into the complete reversal of that master-servant relationship and begin directing financial flow from your spiritual authority, rather than serving its apparent limitations, you're ready to understand the deeper mechanics that make this transformation so remarkably effective. What you're activating isn't just positive thinking or hopeful visualization. You're engaging what can only be described as the law of the spoken word coupled with the principle of instant manifestation. This law operates with mathematical precision, but it responds only when your decree is pure rather than contaminated with doubt, and when your tone carries the frequency of faith instead of the trembling vibration of fear. Most people unknowingly sabotage their abundance commands by speaking the right words with the wrong energy, declaring prosperity while their voice betrays anxiety, proclaiming wealth while their tone reveals desperation. Behind the scenes of every successful financial command lies this hidden truth about vibrational accuracy. Your spoken word must align completely with your inner conviction for the law to engage. When there's harmony between your declaration and your deep knowing, when your voice carries the calm authority of someone who genuinely expects obedience rather than the pleading tone of someone hoping for mercy. Money responds instantly because it has no choice but to obey spiritual law. The transformation that occurs when you master this vibrational alignment often surprises people with its immediacy. Instead of waiting weeks or months to see results from their abundance work, they begin noticing shifts within days or even hours. Unexpected checks arrive, new income opportunities present themselves, or creative solutions to financial challenges suddenly become obvious. This isn't coincidence. It's the natural response of form to pure spiritual command. This journey into pure decree naturally leads you to one of the most fundamental shifts in abundance consciousness: learning to name money rightly. Before you can exercise true spiritual authority over financial flow, you must first recognize what money actually is beneath all the cultural conditioning and religious programming that has distorted its true nature for centuries. The hidden truth that revolutionizes your relationship with abundance is this: money is not a human master that you must serve through exhausting labor and constant worry. Money is not a wicked temptation that corrupts the soul or distances you from spiritual truth. These are false identities that have been projected onto what is actually pure divine substance, born from the invisible realm of spiritual law taking temporary form to serve divine purposes in the material world. When you begin to see money as what it truly is, crystallized spiritual energy, divine intelligence expressing itself through the medium of exchange, universal life force taking the shape of currency, everything changes about how you think, speak, and interact with financial reality. You stop fearing money's power and start recognizing your spiritual authority over it. You cease viewing wealth as potentially corrupting and begin understanding it as potentially liberating when stewarded by awakened consciousness. The impact of this correct naming transforms not just your abundance work, but your entire relationship with material prosperity. Guilt around wanting money dissolves when you recognize money as divine substance. Shame about having wealth evaporates when you understand wealth as spiritual energy in circulation. Fear about losing money diminishes when you realize that divine substance can never truly disappear. It only changes form according to spiritual law. What's particularly powerful about naming money rightly is how it removes the moral and emotional conflicts that sabotage so many people's abundance efforts. When you try to attract what you secretly believe is evil or corrupting, your subconscious creates resistance that blocks the very flow you're consciously trying to create. But when you recognize money as divine substance temporarily taking material form, your entire being can align with attracting and stewarding it without internal conflict. Now I want to explore how this correct understanding of money's true nature transforms your daily financial decisions and eliminates the spiritual guilt that keeps so many people trapped in unnecessary limitation. When you recognize that money is divine substance, when you release every false belief about its nature and begin relating to financial abundance as the pure spiritual energy it actually represents, the next crucial step in establishing your spiritual authority becomes clear. You must completely remove what can only be described as the personification of money. That unconscious tendency to relate to financial flow as if it were a personality with its own moods, preferences, and independent will that might or might not cooperate with your desires. Behind the scenes of most people's financial struggles lies this hidden pattern of treating money as if it were a temperamental person who must be cajoled, pleased, or carefully approached to avoid offense. They wonder if money likes them, worry about whether they've somehow angered the forces of abundance, and spend emotional energy trying to figure out money's mysterious motivations for staying away from their lives. This personification creates an exhausting dynamic where you're constantly trying to read money's mood and adjust your behavior accordingly. But here's the transformation that changes everything about your financial authority. You don't ask money how it feels about your desires or wonder whether it will cooperate with your plans. You don't negotiate with your bank account or try to sweet-talk your bills into behaving differently. Instead, you command money with the same straightforward clarity that a master craftsman commands their tools directly, confidently, without doubt or apology. This shift from personification to utilization represents one of the most liberating recognitions in all of abundance work. Money isn't a person with hurt feelings that must be managed or a mysterious force with hidden agendas that must be deciphered. Money is spiritual substance temporarily taking material form, and like all substance in the key material realm, it responds to conscious direction from awakened spiritual authority. The impact of removing this personification transforms every aspect of your financial decision from emotional drama into practical efficiency. Instead of wondering why money seems to avoid you, or trying to analyze what you might have done wrong to create financial challenges, you simply issue clearer commands about where you want money to flow. Instead of feeling rejected when bills exceed income, you recognize this as feedback that you need to give more precise directions to your obedient servant. This practical approach naturally leads you to the final element of establishing spiritual authority over money. Learning to assert what can only be described as spiritual control through clear, calm, unshakable authority. This isn't the kind of control that comes from force or manipulation, but the natural dominion that emerges when consciousness remembers its true relationship to form. When spirit recalls its rightful position as the director of material substance, the hidden truth about this spiritual control reveals why tone matters so much more than the specific words you use when commanding abundance. When you speak with clear, calm, unshakable authority, you're aligning with what Florence Scovel Shinn called the tone of the soul that remembers who it is, that deep, unwavering frequency of divine identity that recognizes itself as the spiritual authority in any situation involving material form. This remembering transforms your entire presence around money from uncertain and anxious to steady and commanding. Your voice naturally deepens when you speak about finances because you're no longer pleading from a position of spiritual amnesia. You're declaring from a place of divine recollection. Your decisions become more decisive because you're not second-guessing your spiritual authority. Your expectations shift from hoping things might work out to knowing that they must respond to proper spiritual direction. The journey of learning to assert this calm spiritual control often surprises people with how natural it feels once they stop fighting it. There's no strain or effort required to command money when you truly understand your spiritual position. It's as effortless as breathing or thinking, because you're simply aligning with the way consciousness and substance were designed to interact from the beginning. Now, I want to explore how this clear, calm authority translates into specific commands and daily practices that maintain your spiritual dominion over financial flow. Because understanding how to exercise this authority consistently creates lasting transformation rather than temporary improvement. When you feel that shift from personifying money to directing it, when you recognize your divine dominion over material substance and begin asserting spiritual authority rather than negotiating with appearances, something profound happens at the most fundamental level of your being. Your breath itself begins to transform as a reflection of your elevated consciousness. This isn't just a minor physiological change. Your breathing pattern becomes the foundation of your spiritual command because shallow breath is literally fear's signature, while deep breath represents the cornerstone of authentic spiritual authority. Most people unconsciously hold their breath or breathe shallowly when dealing with money, unconsciously signaling to their entire nervous system that financial matters are dangerous territories requiring defensive postures rather than confident command. Behind the scenes of this breathing transformation lies one of the most practical secrets of abundance work. When you consciously breathe deeply with certainty before engaging with any financial decision or money-related conversation, you're not just calming your nerves. You're actually establishing the vibrational foundation that allows spiritual authority to flow through your voice with unmistakable power. Deep-centered breathing creates the inner spaciousness necessary for divine wisdom to move through your words without the constriction that comes from fear-based thinking. The hidden truth about this breath-authority connection reveals why some people's financial commands seem to carry immediate power while others feel hollow despite using similar words. It's not just what you say. It's the depth of certainty from which you speak. And that certainty is literally anchored in how you breathe. When your breath is deep, calm, and steady, your voice naturally carries the frequency of someone who expects obedience rather than someone hoping for cooperation. This breathing foundation naturally supports what becomes perhaps the most transformative daily practice in all of abundance work. Learning to speak directly to money as divine substance before engaging with any financial activity. Instead of unconsciously approaching your bank account, contracts, or financial decisions from old patterns of anxiety and limitation, you begin each money-related moment by establishing your spiritual authority through conscious command. The practice itself is beautifully simple yet remarkably powerful. Money, I now speak to you. You are divine substance, and you obey my voice. But the timing and consistency of this declaration is what creates lasting transformation rather than temporary improvement. You speak these words daily before looking at numbers that might trigger old patterns of scarcity thinking, before signing contracts that might activate fear about commitment, before checking balances that could stir up anxiety about sufficiency. The impact of this consistent daily practice creates what can only be described as a complete retraining of your nervous system around financial interaction. Instead of your body automatically tensing when money topics arise, your physiology begins to associate financial engagement with spiritual authority and expected obedience. Instead of your mind immediately jumping to worst-case scenarios when bills arrive, your consciousness automatically shifts into command mode, where solutions are expected and resources are assumed to be available. The journey of establishing this daily command practice transforms every financial touchpoint from potential stress into opportunity for spiritual demonstration. Your banking app becomes a place where you exercise divine authority rather than check on whether you have enough. Your business negotiations flow from the confidence of someone who knows money moves in response to proper spiritual direction rather than just market forces and human manipulation. What's particularly powerful about speaking to money as divine substance before every financial interaction is how it prevents the unconscious agreements with limitation that sabotage so many people's abundance efforts. When you automatically establish your spiritual authority before looking at numbers or making money decisions, you're creating a protective field of consciousness that prevents fear-based reactions from taking root and growing into self-fulfilling prophecies. Now, I want to explore how this daily command practice creates compound effects that build spiritual authority over time. Because understanding the cumulative power of consistent financial dominion will motivate you to maintain this practice, even when immediate results aren't obvious. When you breathe with divine authority, when you establish this daily command practice of speaking directly to money as obedient divine substance before every financial interaction, you create a foundation of spiritual dominion that naturally leads to one of the most liberating transformations in modern abundance work: the complete destruction of what can only be called the idol of hustle. For too long, our culture has worshipped at the altar of grinding effort, teaching people that money must be earned through sweat, stress, and the brutal sacrifice of peace for productivity. This hustle mentality has become so deeply embedded in collective consciousness that many people feel guilty about wanting abundance to come easily, believing that struggle somehow makes them more deserving of prosperity, or that effortless manifestation indicates spiritual laziness. Behind the scenes of this hustle worship lies a profound misunderstanding of how divine law actually operates in the realm of abundance. The truth that changes everything is this: money flows according to spiritual alignment, not human exhaustion. Wealth responds to vibrational authority, not frantic activity. Prosperity gravitates toward consciousness that operates from peace and certainty rather than consciousness driven by fear and desperation. The hidden revelation about destroying this hustle idol is that most people have been working against themselves without realizing it. Every time they approach money from anxiety and urgency, they create resistance that blocks the very flow they're trying to generate. Every time they sacrifice inner peace for outer productivity, they disconnect from the spiritual frequency that naturally attracts abundance. Every time they choose stress over trust, they move further away from the effortless demonstration that comes through divine alignment. This transformation from hustle to harmony requires a complete rewiring of the language patterns that have been programming scarcity into daily speech. Instead of saying, "I have to hustle harder to make money," you begin to declare, "I align with divine flow, and money comes with ease." Instead of glorifying exhaustion with phrases like grinding for success, you start honoring spiritual rhythm with statements like, "I work from inspiration and rest in divine timing." The impact of this language replacement creates what can only be described as a complete nervous system makeover around abundance. Your body begins to associate money, making with peace rather than stress, with flow rather than force, with trust rather than terror. Your decisions start coming from a place of inner wisdom rather than outer pressure. Your opportunities begin aligning with your natural gifts and interests rather than requiring you to sacrifice your well-being for financial gain. The journey of replacing bondage language with freedom language transforms not just how you speak about money, but how you actually experience the process of creating prosperity. When you eliminate phrases that glorify struggle and substitute them with words that honor ease, your subconscious begins to believe that abundance can come through joy rather than suffering, through alignment rather than exhaustion, through spiritual law rather than human force. What's particularly powerful about this linguistic transformation is how it changes your relationship with time and productivity. Instead of feeling like you're racing against some invisible clock that demands constant motion, you begin to move in harmony with divine timing that knows exactly when to act and when to rest. Instead of measuring your worth by how busy you appear, you start evaluating your effectiveness by how aligned you feel with your highest good. This shift from hustle language to harmony language naturally creates what mystics call effortless manifestation, a state where opportunities, resources, and income streams begin appearing through synchronicity rather than strain, through inspiration rather than desperation, through divine orchestration rather than human manipulation. Now I want to explore how this elimination of hustle mentality opens the door to what Florence Scovel Shinn called working under grace, because understanding how to operate from spiritual ease rather than human effort will revolutionize not just your financial results, but your entire quality of life. When you choose harmony over hustle, when you're ready to destroy that false idol of grinding effort and step into effortless abundance through spiritual alignment rather than physical exhaustion, you discover something that will fundamentally transform not just how you make money, but how you experience the entire process of creating prosperity in your life. The grinding myth that money must be made through sweat and exhaustion represents one of the deepest forms of spiritual amnesia plaguing modern consciousness. This isn't divine law operating in your life. This is human programming inherited from generations who forgot their true spiritual authority and began believing that suffering somehow sanctifies abundance, that struggle proves worthiness, that exhaustion demonstrates dedication to success. Behind the scenes of this programming lies a tragic misunderstanding of how divine intelligence actually operates in the material world. When you serve hustle instead of harmony, when you prioritize frantic activity over spiritual alignment, you're essentially telling the universe that you don't trust its ability to orchestrate perfect timing and effortless opportunities on your behalf. You're operating from the false belief that God needs your anxiety to make things work rather than your faith to allow them to unfold. The transformation that occurs when you completely replace bondage language with freedom language creates immediate shifts in both your inner experience and your outer results. Instead of declaring, "I have to hustle harder to make this work," you begin to affirm, "I align with divine flow and allow perfect opportunities to find me." Instead of saying, "I need to grind until I break through," you start proclaiming, "I rest in divine timing, and money comes through grace, not through distress." This linguistic shift reveals a profound truth about how abundance actually manifests. Money responds to vibration, not calculation. It flows toward consciousness that operates from peace and certainty rather than consciousness driven by mathematical analysis. and strategic manipulation. When you align with divine flow, instead of forcing outcomes through human effort, you tap into intelligence that sees connections and possibilities completely invisible to the worried mind. The hidden power of serving harmony instead of hustle lies in how it changes your entire decision-making process around money and opportunities. Instead of evaluating every possibility through the lens of how hard will I have to work for this, you begin to assess options based on how aligned does this feel with my highest good. Instead of choosing paths that require the most sacrifice and struggle, you start gravitating toward routes that feel expansive, joyful, and sustainable. This shift from effort-based to alignment-based abundance creates what can only be described as a complete reversal in how opportunities present themselves to you. When you were operating from hustle consciousness, you attracted situations that required maximum effort for minimum return because your vibration was broadcasting, I believe in difficulty. But when you align with harmony consciousness, you begin magnetizing circumstances that offer maximum return for minimal effort because you're now broadcasting, I believe in divine efficiency. The journey of learning to serve harmony rather than hustle often surprises people with how quickly their external circumstances begin to mirror their internal transformation. Clients start appearing who are easier to work with and pay better rates. Business opportunities emerge that align perfectly with natural talents rather than requiring you to become someone you're not. Income begins flowing through channels that feel sustainable and enjoyable rather than depleting and stressful. What's particularly beautiful about this transformation is how it affects not just your financial results, but your entire quality of life. When you stop believing that money requires suffering to deserve it, you begin experiencing abundance as a natural expression of joy rather than a hard-earned reward for enduring pain. Your relationship with prosperity becomes celebratory rather than burdensome, expansive rather than contractive. Now, I want to explore how this harmony-based approach naturally leads you into what Florence Scovel Shinn called working under grace, because understanding this elevated mode of operation will show you how abundance can become as natural and effortless as breathing. When you observe harmony instead of hustle, when you feel that fundamental shift occurring in how you approach money, making and move from force into divine flow, you're ready to tackle one of the most deeply embedded beliefs that keeps people trapped in financial struggle despite their spiritual understanding. This belief is so woven into the fabric of how most people think about prosperity that they don't even recognize it as a limitation. It's the earn it mentality that must be completely canceled from your vocabulary and consciousness. The phrase "I earn it" represents one of the most spiritually destructive concepts ever imposed on human consciousness around abundance. This language implies that money is a reward given by external authorities for good behavior, hard work, or sufficient suffering. It suggests that prosperity must be justified through human effort rather than received through divine inheritance. It creates the exhausting dynamic where you're constantly trying to prove your worthiness to an economic system that operates according to completely different principles than spiritual law. Behind the scenes of this earning mentality lies a profound misunderstanding of your true relationship to abundance. Money is not earned through human performance any more than sunlight is earned by flowers or gravity is earned by planets. Money is permitted to flow into your experience when your consciousness aligns with the spiritual laws that govern prosperity. It's not achieved through strategic manipulation, but received through vibrational harmony with divine abundance. The transformation that occurs when you completely eliminate earning language from your mental vocabulary creates immediate relief from the pressure and anxiety that accompanies most people's financial efforts. Instead of feeling like you must constantly justify your desire for money or prove your worthiness through sacrifice and struggle, you begin to recognize abundance as your natural spiritual inheritance that flows freely when you stop blocking it with limitation beliefs. This shift from earning to permitting naturally leads you to one of the most powerful declarations in all of abundance work. A statement so transformative that it literally rewires your nervous system around money when spoken with genuine conviction and consistent repetition. The declaration is simple but revolutionary. Money is obedient. I am the voice it obeys. The hidden power of this specific declaration lies in how it reverses the master-servant relationship that most people have unconsciously established with money. Instead of seeing yourself as money's servant who must work hard to earn its approval, you begin to recognize money as your obedient servant that naturally responds to your spiritual authority when exercised with genuine faith and consistency. The journey of declaring money's obedience until your nervous system truly believes, it creates what can only be described as a complete personality transplant around financial matters. Your voice naturally deepens when you speak about money because you're no longer pleading from a position of perceived powerlessness. Your decisions become more decisive because you're operating from spiritual authority rather than human anxiety. Your expectations shift from hoping money might come to knowing it must respond to proper spiritual command. What's particularly powerful about this declaration is how it systematically overwrites every groove of hard labor, thinking that has been carved into your consciousness through years of cultural conditioning. Each time you speak, money is obedient. I am the voice it obeys with genuine conviction. You're literally reprogramming your subconscious mind to expect financial flow through grace, rather than through grinding effort. The impact of this nervous system reprogramming extends far beyond your relationship with money itself. It transforms how you approach opportunities, negotiate agreements, make investments, and even handle routine financial tasks like paying bills or checking account balances. Instead of these activities triggering anxiety and limitation thinking, they begin to feel like natural expressions of your spiritual authority over material substance. Now I want to explore how this obedience declaration creates compound effects that build momentum over time, because understanding how spiritual authority grows stronger with consistent use will inspire you to maintain this practice, even when immediate results aren't immediately visible in your bank account. When you feel that shift from earning mentality to receiving consciousness, when money begins to obey your voice through consistent declaration and spiritual authority, you arrive at perhaps the most liberating moment in this entire transformation. The opportunity to consciously burn every old contract you've unconsciously signed with struggle, fear, and financial limitation. Behind the scenes of your abundance journey lies a collection of invisible agreements that have been governing your financial experience without your conscious awareness. These aren't formal documents, but energetic contracts written in the sweat of exhaustion, signed with the ink of anxiety, and renewed daily through patterns of thought and speech that reinforce scarcity rather than abundance. Every time you've said money is hard to make, you've renewed your contract with difficulty. Every moment you've chosen worry over trust, you've signed another term of service with financial stress. The visualization that transforms everything is simple, but profound. See yourself standing before a great fireplace where flames of divine love burn with purifying intensity. In your hands, you hold that old contract written in sweat and fear, covered with clauses about having to work harder, earn more, prove your worthiness, and sacrifice your peace for financial security. This contract has bound you to experiences of limitation, not because these experiences were divinely ordained, but because your consciousness agreed to them through unconscious repetition of scarcity-based thoughts and words. The hidden power of this burning ceremony lies in what replaces the old agreement. As you watch those limiting contracts dissolve into ash and smoke, as you feel the weight of impossible terms and exhausting conditions lifting from your consciousness, you begin to speak a new covenant that rewrites your entire relationship with abundance. With the authority of someone who has remembered their divine nature, you declare, I now sign my name to ease and overflow. This new covenant represents a complete reversal of everything the old contract demanded. Instead of signing up for struggle, you're committing to ease. Instead of agreeing to scarcity, you're choosing overflow. Instead of accepting limitation as normal, you're establishing abundance as your new baseline. Expectation. This isn't wishful thinking. This is conscious choice about which spiritual laws you'll allow to govern your experience. The transformation that occurs when you truly burn these old contracts and sign the new covenant creates what can only be described as a complete identity upgrade around your relationship to divine supply. You stop seeing yourself as someone who must seek, chase, and hope for abundance, and you begin to recognize yourself as someone who hosts, channels, and distributes the wealth of divine intelligence through your elevated consciousness. This identity shift reveals one of the most profound recognitions in all of spiritual development. You are not the seeker standing outside the gates of prosperity, hoping someone will notice your need and throw you some scraps of abundance. You are the sender, the one through whom divine supply moves into the world. You are not begging at the gates of provision. You are the gate itself, the opening through which heaven pours its resources into earthly experience. The impact of rising into this sender consciousness transforms every aspect of how you move through financial situations. Instead of approaching opportunities with the energy of "please choose me," you begin to evaluate them with the discernment of, "is this worthy of my divine gifts?" Instead of wondering if you deserve abundance, you start asking how abundance wants to flow through you for the highest good of all concerned. What's particularly powerful about recognizing yourself as the gate rather than the seeker is how it eliminates the desperation and neediness that actually repel abundance. When you know you are the channel through which divine wealth flows, when you understand that supply moves through you rather than to you, your entire energy field shifts from contracted neediness to expansive generosity. Now I want to explore how this gate consciousness transforms not just your internal experience, but your external interactions with people, opportunities, and financial decisions, because understanding how to operate as a channel for divine supply will revolutionize every aspect of your abundance experience. When you recognize yourself as the gate of abundance, when you feel that profound identity shift occurring as you step into your role as the channel through which divine wealth flows, you're ready to make perhaps the most empowering transformation in all of spiritual development around prosperity, the complete shift from asking to authorizing in every aspect of your financial life. This isn't just a change in vocabulary or a subtle adjustment in how you phrase your desires. This represents a fundamental elevation in consciousness from the position of spiritual beggar to the role of divine administrator. When you truly make this shift, you stop approaching abundance with the energy of "please, give me what I need," and begin operating with the authority of "I now authorize the release of what's already mine." Behind the scenes of this asking to authorizing transformation lies one of the most profound recognitions available to human consciousness. You were never designed to plead for what belongs to you by divine inheritance. Every time you ask for abundance, as if you might be denied, every moment you approach prosperity with uncertainty about whether you deserve it, you're unconsciously diminishing your spiritual authority and operating from a false identity of separation from your source. The declaration that changes everything is both simple and revolutionary. I no longer ask, I authorize. But this isn't just different wording for the same old hoping and wishing. This is a complete reversal of your relationship to divine supply. When you authorize rather than ask, you're speaking from heaven rather than from hunger, operating as an oracle of divine law rather than responding to the mood of your bank balance. The hidden power of this authorization shift reveals why some people's abundance affirmations seem to carry immediate weight, while others feel hollow despite similar words. It's not just what you say. It's the spiritual position from which you're speaking. When you ask, you're implying that someone else has the power to grant or deny your good. When you authorize, you're recognizing that divine law has already established your abundance, and you're simply releasing what's been held in spiritual escrow. This transformation in spiritual position naturally leads to a complete elevation in how your voice carries authority when you speak about financial matters. Your voice must begin to reflect what Florence Scovel Shinn called divine certainty, the same unshakable confidence that Jesus demonstrated when he said, "Peace be still," to the raging storm, and the wind and waves immediately obeyed his command. The journey of developing this divine certainty in your voice often surprises people because it doesn't require years of spiritual training or complex techniques. It emerges naturally when you truly understand that you are made in the image of spoken authority, that the same creative word power that formed galaxies and established natural laws operates through your consciousness when it's aligned with divine truth rather than human limitation. What's particularly transformative about speaking with divine certainty is how it affects not just your inner confidence, but how external circumstances respond to your declarations. When your voice carries the frequency of absolute spiritual authority, when you speak from the recognition that you are authorized to command rather than obligated to beg, money begins responding to your words with the same obedience that natural forces showed to Christ's commands. The impact of this voice transformation extends into every conversation, every negotiation, every financial decision you encounter. Instead of asking if someone might consider paying you what you're worth, you begin stating with quiet authority what your services cost. Instead of wondering if opportunities might come your way, you start declaring that perfect opportunities must align with divine timing. Instead of hoping abundance will notice you, you begin authorizing its immediate release into your experience. Now, I want to explore how this divine certainty creates what can only be described as magnetic authority that draws people, resources, and opportunities into your orbit without any effort or manipulation on your part. Because understanding this attraction principle will show you how spiritual authority naturally creates material abundance. When you speak with divine certainty, when you feel that shift from asking to authorizing occurring in your consciousness, as you recognize your true spiritual position as one made in the image of spoken authority, you discover something that will revolutionize not just how you think about money, but how you speak about your entire financial reality on a daily basis. Most people have unconsciously trained themselves to echo the contents of their bank account rather than the contents of the kingdom. They wake up each morning and immediately begin reporting lack instead of law, quoting their expenses instead of their inheritance, describing their limitations instead of declaring their divine provisions. This pattern of echoing scarcity creates a feedback loop that reinforces the very conditions they're trying to escape. Behind the scenes of this echoing pattern lies one of the most subtle yet powerful forms of self-sabotage in abundance work. Every time you speak your current financial circumstances as if they represent permanent truth, every moment you describe your bank balance as if it defines your worth or potential, you're unconsciously programming your subconscious mind to accept limitation as your identity rather than temporary appearance that can be transformed through spiritual authority. The transformation that changes everything is learning to stop being a reporter for your bank account and start being an oracle for the kingdom. Instead of saying, "I only have 50 these," you begin declaring, "Divine supply is unlimited, and I am its perfect channel." Instead of complaining about bills and expenses, you start proclaiming the abundance that flows through every transaction. Instead of discussing what you lack, you begin describing what you're authorized to receive. This shift from reporting appearances to declaring truth naturally leads you to one of the most empowering recognitions in all of financial transformation. The understanding that you are not applying for money like some hopeful candidate waiting to be selected by external authorities. You are appointing money to flow into your experience through your spiritual authority as a divine heir with unlimited inheritance. The declaration that establishes this new relationship is profound in its simplicity. I am not applying for money. I am appointing it. This isn't just different language. This is a complete reversal of your position in the cosmic hierarchy. You are not the applicant hoping to be chosen. You are the apo with authority to summon. You are not supplicating for favor. You are commanding obedience from divine substance that recognizes your voice as its proper director. The hidden power of this appointing consciousness creates what can only be described as magnetic authority that draws financial opportunities, resources, and support into your experience without any effort or manipulation on your part. When you truly understand that you appoint rather than apply, When you operate from the recognition that money awaits your authorization rather than your application, your entire energy field shifts from contracted neediness to expansive command. The impact of this transformation extends into every financial interaction you encounter. Your negotiations become more confident because you're not trying to convince someone to give you what you need. You're discerning whether they're worthy to receive what you're authorized to distribute. Your business conversations flow with greater ease because you're not hoping to be selected, but evaluating alignment with your divine assignments. Your investment decisions become more intuitive because you're operating from spiritual wisdom rather than anxious calculation. What's particularly powerful about recognizing yourself as the appointer rather than the applicant is how it eliminates the emotional desperation that repels abundance while creating the magnetic certainty that attracts it effortlessly. People respond differently to your energy when you approach them from divine authority rather than human neediness. Opportunities align more synchronously when you're operating from spiritual appointment rather than material application. The journey of embodying this appointing consciousness often surprises people with how quickly external circumstances begin to mirror internal transformation. Doors that seemed permanently closed begin to open with mysterious ease. Resources that appeared unavailable start flowing from unexpected directions. People who were previously unresponsive suddenly become remarkably helpful and generous. Now I want to explore how this magnetic authority creates specific changes in how people respond to your presence and proposals, because understanding the energetic effects of operating from divine appointment rather than human application will show you why spiritual authority is the ultimate abundance multiplier. When you feel that shift from applying to appointing occurring in your consciousness, when you step into your role as divine administrator of unlimited supply, you discover something that will fundamentally transform how money responds to your very presence and voice. This isn't just about changing your mindset or improving your confidence. You're activating what can only be described as voice recognition in the spiritual realm, where money itself begins to identify and respond to the specific frequency of your spiritual authority. The declaration that establishes this recognition is both profound and practical. Money recognizes my voice. It does not hesitate when I speak. This isn't metaphorical language or wishful thinking. This is the actual mechanism by which divine substance learns to distinguish between commands spoken from genuine spiritual authority and requests uttered from desperate human need. Money as crystallized divine intelligence has the capacity to hear the faith frequency woven into your words and respond accordingly. Behind the scenes of this voice recognition process lies one of the most fascinating aspects of spiritual law, the recognition that money moves not because of external circumstances or market conditions, but because consciousness moves first. When you speak with genuine spiritual authority, when your words carry the unmistakable signature of divine certainty, money begins responding to your voice the way iron filings respond to a powerful magnet. It doesn't hesitate, analyze, or wait for better conditions. It moves because you move in consciousness first. The transformation that occurs when money begins recognizing your voice creates what can only be described as financial magnetism that operates beyond ordinary cause and effect. Opportunities start appearing that seem almost too perfectly timed to be coincidental. Resources begin flowing from directions you never could have planned or predicted. People begin offering exactly what you need before you even ask for it, because your energy field now broadcasts the frequency of someone whose voice money recognizes and obeys. This voice recognition naturally leads to the development of what Florence Scovel Shinn called commanding consciousness, the ability to speak increase into manifestation not through suggestion or begging, but as a rightful heir of divine abundance with legally authorized voice in the spiritual realm. The declaration that activates this authority is powerful in its directness. I command increase and it obeys. The hidden truth about this commanding power reveals why some people can speak abundance into their experience while others remain trapped in limitation despite similar words and intentions. It's not about the volume of your voice or the passion of your delivery. It's about the legal standing from which you speak when you command as a rightful heir rather than request as a hopeful outsider. When you issue directives from your position as divine administrator, rather than pleas from a position of spiritual poverty, the entire universe responds differently to your voice. The impact of developing this commanding consciousness transforms every aspect of your relationship with financial flow. Your business negotiations carry more weight because you're not hoping to be chosen. You're evaluating whether opportunities align with the increase you've already commanded. Your investment decisions become more intuitive because you're operating from the knowing that increase must manifest rather than the fear that it might not. Your daily money interactions flow with greater ease because you approach them from the confidence of someone whose commands are recognized and obeyed. What's particularly powerful about learning to command increase is how it eliminates the emotional turmoil that accompanies most people's abundance efforts. When you truly understand that your voice carries legal authority in the spiritual realm, when you recognize that increase must obey your properly spoken commands, you stop worrying about whether abundance will come and start preparing for how it will manifest. The journey of developing this commanding voice often surprises people with how natural it feels once they stop fighting their own spiritual authority. There's no strain or effort required to command increase when you're speaking from your true identity as a divine heir. It's as effortless as breathing because you're simply aligning with the way consciousness and substance were designed to interact from the beginning. Now, I want to explore how this commanding consciousness creates compound effects that build momentum over time. Because understanding how spiritual authority grows stronger through consistent use will inspire you to maintain these practices even when immediate results aren't visible in your external circumstances. When you feel that voice recognition activating in your consciousness, when you step into your authority as rightful heir with legally authorized voice in the realm of divine abundance, you discover perhaps the most liberating transformation in this entire journey. The complete shift from chasing abundance to consciously choosing it from your position as divine administrator of unlimited supply. The declaration that establishes this new relationship with prosperity is both simple and revolutionary. I am not chasing, I am choosing. This represents a fundamental elevation in consciousness, from the energy of desperate pursuit to the calm authority of deliberate selection. When you truly embody this truth, you stop running after opportunities like someone trying to catch a bus that might leave without you, and you begin sitting in what can only be described as dominion seat, that inner throne of spiritual authority from which you consciously choose what belongs to you by divine inheritance. Behind the scenes of this chasing to choosing transformation lies one of the most profound recognitions available to human consciousness around abundance. You were never meant to scramble for scraps of prosperity or compete with others for limited resources. You were appointed to distribute overflow, not desperately seek sufficiency. Your role in the cosmic economy is that of spiritual administrator who selects from unlimited divine provision rather than anxious applicant hoping to be granted minimal survival needs. The impact of sitting in Dominion's seat transforms every aspect of how you approach financial opportunities and decisions. Instead of evaluating possibilities from the desperate question, will this save me from my limitations? You begin assessing them from the elevated question, does this align with the overflow I'm appointed to distribute? Instead of grasping at every chance for income because you fear scarcity, you start choosing only those opportunities that resonate with your highest purpose and greatest joy. This choosing consciousness naturally leads to the recognition of your ultimate financial authority, the understanding that your word, when aligned with spiritual truth, literally governs your wealth more powerfully than any external economic force or market condition. The declaration that establishes this governance is profound in its implications. My word governs my wealth. The hidden truth about this word governance principle reveals why some people remain prosperous even during economic downturns, while others struggle during boom times. It's not about external circumstances determining internal experience. It's about internal authority determining external reflection. When your aligned word builds the structure of expectation, assigns the flow of resources, and multiplies what already exists through spiritual command, no economic system has jurisdiction over your abundance. The transformation that occurs when you truly understand that your word governs your wealth creates what can only be described as financial sovereignty. The recognition that you are not subject to the economic opinions, market predictions, or financial limitations that seem to control other people's experiences. Your properly aligned word becomes the primary factor that determines what manifests in your financial reality. What's particularly powerful about word governance is how it operates through what spiritual teachers call creative authority. Your aligned word doesn't just describe or hope for better financial conditions. It actually builds the energetic structure that determines what can and cannot appear in your experience. It assigns the flow of resources by establishing the vibrational pathways through which money moves toward you. It multiplies what exists by speaking increase over your current circumstances rather than limitation over your apparent lack. The journey of learning to govern wealth through aligned word often surprises people with how quickly external circumstances begin to mirror internal shifts in authority. Business relationships become more respectful because you're operating from sovereignty rather than neediness. Financial negotiations flow more smoothly because you're choosing from abundance rather than grasping from scarcity. Investment opportunities align more synchronously because your word is creating the structure that attracts perfect timing and ideal conditions. Now, I want to explore how this word governance creates what can only be described as prosperity immunity that protects your abundance from external economic turbulence. Because understanding how spiritual authority shields you from collective financial fear will show you why aligned consciousness is the ultimate financial security. When you feel that shift from chasing to choosing occurring in your consciousness, when you recognize your role as divine administrator who selects overflow from your position of spiritual sovereignty, you arrive at what can only be described as the sacred culmination of this entire transformation process. What you're experiencing is no longer just personal development or abundance work. This has become what Florence Scovel Shinn called spiritual engagement, a divine transaction occurring at the deepest levels of reality. Behind the scenes of this engagement lies the formation of what can only be described as an invisible covenant between your word and your world, between what you declare with spiritual authority and what dares to appear in your physical experience. This isn't a one-sided conversation where you speak into the void, hoping something might respond. This is a dynamic living partnership between your aligned consciousness and the creative forces that shape material reality. The hidden truth about this spiritual engagement reveals why this work transcends ordinary manifestation techniques or positive thinking approaches. You're not trying to manipulate external circumstances through mental effort or emotional intensity. You're participating in the fundamental creative process that continuously shapes and reshapes reality, according to the words spoken from genuine spiritual authority. Every declaration you make from this elevated consciousness becomes a binding agreement in the invisible realm that must manifest as visible form. This divine transaction operates according to principles that most people never discover because they remain trapped in purely human approaches to abundance. When you engage spiritually rather than just mentally, when your declarations carry the weight of divine covenant rather than the hope of human wishing, the entire universe responds as a co-creative partner rather than a resistant force that must be conquered or convinced. The transformation that occurs through this spiritual engagement creates what can only be described as complete identity fusion with your divine nature. You are no longer someone trying to become abundant. You recognize yourself as abundance itself seeking expression through human form. You cease being a person hoping to manifest wealth. You embody wealth consciousness that naturally attracts its material reflection. This recognition leads you to what may be the most powerful declaration in all of spiritual literature, a statement so complete and so transformative that it serves as both resurrection, script, and scroll of dominion for anyone ready to claim their ultimate spiritual authority. The words are simple, but they carry the concentrated power of this entire journey. I am the formula. I overflow. Now the profound truth embedded in this declaration reveals the deepest secret of abundance consciousness. You are not seeking a formula for prosperity that exists outside yourself. You are the formula. You are not hoping to eventually overflow with abundance. You overflow now because overflow is your essential nature when aligned with divine truth. You are not becoming someone who demonstrates spiritual law. You are the living demonstration of spiritual law in action. The impact of speaking these words with complete conviction creates what can only be described as instant identification with your highest spiritual identity. This isn't gradual growth or slow development. This is immediate recognition of what has always been true about your essential nature. The moment you declare, I am the formula, I overflow now with genuine spiritual authority. Every tomb of limitation that has held your consciousness captive begins to crack open. What's particularly powerful about this resurrection script is how it calls you forth from every form of spiritual death you may have unconsciously accepted. The death of dreaming big, the death of expecting miracles, the death of believing in your own divine worth. This declaration doesn't just change your circumstances, it resurrects your true identity from beneath layers of learned limitation and false humility. Now, I want to explore how this complete formula recognition transforms you into what can only be described as a walking demonstration of abundance law. Because understanding how to carry this overflow consciousness into your daily interactions will show you how to become a living testament to the power of aligned spiritual authority. When you recognize yourself as the formula of abundance, when you feel that complete identification with your divine nature occurring as the living demonstration of overflow rather than someone seeking it from outside sources, you've just completed one of the most profound spiritual journeys available to human consciousness. If you've stayed with me through this entire transformation, if you've felt these shifts occurring in your awareness, as we've moved from burden releasing to gate opening to voice recognition to spiritual sovereignty, then something tells me this message was specifically meant for you at this exact moment in your life. The fact that you're still here, that you've absorbed these teachings about sleep programming and abundance consciousness, suggests that your soul was ready for this level of spiritual authority. I create these videos because I know there are people like you out there, souls who are ready to move beyond ordinary approaches to abundance and step into the profound spiritual laws that govern true prosperity. If this content has stirred something in you, if you felt that inner knowing that says yes, this is how abundance really works, then I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. This isn't just spiritual entertainment. This is practical mysticism that can transform your entire financial reality when applied consistently. And if you've made it all the way to this moment, if you've journeyed with me from the very beginning through to this recognition of yourself as the abundance formula, write in the comments, I am the living formula, because I want to acknowledge those who went the distance, who stayed present for the complete transmission, rather than just sampling pieces here and there. The connection we've built over these minutes together, the way these teachings have landed in your consciousness, tells me that a simple like on this video would help this message reach other souls who are ready for the same awakening. There's something beautiful about knowing that your engagement helps expand the circle of people discovering their divine authority over abundance. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into the practical application of these principles in your daily life. It's the perfect continuation of what we've explored together, showing you exactly how to maintain this formula consciousness when external circumstances try to pull you back into old patterns. Click and continue with me over there, because your abundance journey has only just begun.